Hi, and welcome to a special beginning of the Fireground Training Bureau Kitchen Table Talk, where I forgot to hit the record button while we did the Zoom session, so we're just going to start in the middle of the introductions right now.
Right-handed.
Perfect. Nice. All right. That's the way to be. How about Ron K. popping on? Left-handed or right-handed, Chief?
I am right-handed. First-time visitor, fellas. I was actually doing some research for some projects that we're doing at work, and I came across Barrett's site, so I thought I'd jump in.
Oh, awesome.
If you don't mind.
No, glad to have you. The more the merrier. It gets a little rambunctious in here, but it is supposed to be like a kitchen table, so...
Okay.
And it sounded a little apprehensive. We'll see where it goes. You can tell already it's off the rails. It's just a matter of how
I don't know a lot of you guys, but I'm the fire chief in Washington Township, Lucas County. I'm also a safety officer for the Toledo Fire Department.
And Ron was my first officer on the line coming out of the academy. Learned so much from him then and before then, knowing him and running into him before. So awesome to have you, Ron. Please chime in as with anything you've got on your mind. Matt Waltz is jumping in now, so we'll pounce on him later. How about Tony?
Hey everybody, Tony Combs, Providence Township Fire, previously with Toledo. Ron, it's good to see you. Good to hear you. I can't see you. It's been a while, and I guess that's it.
All right, and what?
Nope, now I can't. Actually, somebody jumped in and took Ron's secret square. He's now moved over one.
Oh. Dan Dorner made it in this time, which is good.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dan.
What's wrong with you tonight?
I am correct-handed.
All right. Matt Welch, I think, was the last one to jump on. I don't think I missed anybody else.
No, you didn't, I guess.
What class are you finishing this week, Matt? Sounds like it's usually a question people ask me.
Well, I just finished my first week of Fire Officer 2. How's that?
Oh, dang. All right.
Past week.
Wait, you're not taking it with Jason Francis? Jason, are you hearing this?
I am.
For shame.
I send people out to check out other classes and report back.
Well,
If it helps, Barrett, I didn't take mine through Jason either.
Well, let me just tell you from that standpoint.
It's a real slap in the face.
Virtual classes like Fire Officer 1, Fire Officer 2 are not as cool as they sound.
They sounded cool?
Well, I don't know. When you think about, oh, yeah, I don't have to go down to the academy or anything like that. I just do it all online. No, but, so I just finished my first week up there and just got back from Cincinnati this weekend visiting my son. Graduate next month. So one last kind of hoorah father and son weekend, and I can't keep up with the college boys anymore.
Why? How hungover are you? You know what? We don't need to get into that.
Well, I would tell you this. It's not that bad because I fell asleep at midnight last night, but I had to leave Cincinnati at 6 this morning because I'd be back to work tonight or at noontime. So let me just, with the whole time change and all that. So yeah.
I was going to say, who's gotten hosed by the time change besides Matt? Nobody. Great. Lively bunch tonight. So I'm trying to remember where we left off with Passion, unless I missed anybody else, because when I miss people, they get all upset. I think I hit everybody. With Passion last week, let's jump right in with yours. Online class. How do you keep because I can't talk about online class right now because one of my instructors is in the class, and I am an instructor teaching other classes, and I have a different perspective, but maybe. So from your perspective, especially because you're talking like fire academy classes, how hard is it to feel that or share that or even get that recharge in online classes?
No, I mean, the class itself and the method of doing it aren't that bad. I mean, number one, I'm more of an in-person learner and talking. And we're talking with like the Fire Officer 1, the Fire Officer 2. I just think it'd be more beneficial if you were in if you were in the group together, actually live, throwing things back and forth instead of being on, they use Microsoft Teams instead of having, 19 people on this screen for 2 hours a day, 2 days a week. It'd be better, I think, if you were all in one group. And, this being the third class I've done through them down there, because obviously Fire Officer 1, I did the inspector class through the virtual. Now this one, it's getting a little bit easier, but I'll tell you what, if I wouldn't known this, I was going to I should have bought some stock in the Hewlett Packard ink cartridges, because my gosh, printing stuff off and then scanning them in, send them all in all the JPRs. That's probably the worst part of it, but
man, yeah, it seems like a lot of work.
It is, but it's kind of one of those, it's what do you do type things. I mean, when I first did the officer, one class, that was the only thing really available online,
right?
Because, still during the COVID stuff, and so it was like, well, and because you have to buy the book and the code for the online thing, it's like it's good for a year. So I'm like, well, I might as well do the officer 2, just because I don't pay for another code to get in the online stuff. So, but yeah, it's like I said, it's been nice because I've met a lot. Because with this also too, there's people from all over the state that are, in it. Some are predominantly from the Columbus area, but I mean, there's some from Cincinnati, over in Cleveland, and so it's kind of neat. But the one thing I find out, especially with the academy, is that I'm kind of at a disadvantage because I don't have that experience of being and running and operating on a full-time department.
Mm-hmm.
It's being a volunteer, so it's kind of neat, but at the same time, it's bringing it from a different angle, I guess.
And I guess talk about those things that a lot of times we all look forward to getting from outside classes. I mean, you usually get to sit around, even if it's in the breaks, and be like, hey, what do you guys send on a first alarm? Or, hey, what do you guys have for this? Or,
right. Yeah.
What brand rigs are you driving? Or, all the goofy little stuff that especially the nerdy of us that would spend a Sunday night for 2 hours talking to each other on the internet.
Well, it was funny because you mentioned that in the fire officer class, one of the things obviously you do, scenario-based stuff and all that. What do you have? And, we're talking to some of these people, and like, oh yeah, I got my first engine coming in. I got, the ladder coming in, and I got this ladder coming in over here, and, like 7-8 automatic apparatus. And we're lucky to get 1, maybe 2 out here, and then 1 10 minutes away because you called in for mutual aid. Mm-hmm. So it's, like I said, and it's nice because to get that perspective of where I have not really been with a full-time, obviously I've never been with a full-time department, just doing part-time stuff here. So it's kind of neat to get that, but yet it also is nice because now I'm seeing a different side of it where all I've really, seen from the volunteer end. So and a couple of the instructors have asked for just some input because, most of the instructors that are in the academy are all, retired chiefs or, retired, career firefighters. So.
And I guess to bounce off over to Jason as an instructor of a Fire Officer 2 class currently that Matt didn't know he could sign up for, that'd be closer to home to do online. That was a joke. Thank you, guys. What's it like to teach an online class? What different way, like taking it, because again, taking it back to the passion side of it. Thank you for the laughing, crying face, Chad, instead of just actually laughing at the joke and unmuting yourself. But trying to keep that passion alive for what you're talking about and these are people moving forward in the fire service. How do you keep them interested in what you're talking about versus just phoning it in because it's online and we're in this, this situation?
Was that pointed towards me, Barrett?
Yeah, because you're teaching every week. I stopped.
Yeah.
I'm just taking your class. So yeah, like how much pressure does that feel to you to try and find a way to keep people passionate on something that otherwise would be pretty easy to figure out who's passionate and who's not within your class?
Yeah, number one, it does stink to do it virtually opposed to in person, but since teaching the classes since 2016, I've always done a combination of hybrid and classroom just to cater to the volunteer corps because of their time restraints. But like I did say, it does stink. I wish we could do it in person more, and that's what I plan on doing. Like for the next classes, I'd like to do 75% classroom and 25% online, just to see volunteers out there that are interested in doing it. But one thing that I did find that does stink is when you're doing the virtual classes, instead of teaching off the PowerPoints that I send out for everybody to view, I've been finding it beneficial to create my own PowerPoints just to keep the whole class on task, just so that we're not talking, for 2 hours on one subject when we got 3 other topics that we have to accomplish.
Yeah, I took a lot of cues from you rather, when it came to like group work, adding group work into the classes, or just kind of throwing the presentations out and saying, you know what, you're responsible for reading a little more on your own, but we're gonna look for more of those valuable conversations, because that's the only thing that's different than complete self-study in these classes. Doing 2 instructor classes so far this year and trying to teach people how to teach in the worst possible way to teach is really frustrating. And so I followed your cue a lot because I wanted to hone in on that part and give them 4 hours of, and I think you're aimed at doing the same, 4 hours of, value versus stuff they could read or review or look at on their own. And then you get 15 minutes here or there because you're trying to rush through the content.
Oh
yeah, go ahead.
Oops. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was done. Sometimes I just start saying other words at the end of my sentences that don't really mean anything. So it's all you.
Yeah, I mean, like for the group work and the homework, I mean, that should be the main focus of the class. It shouldn't be going over PowerPoints necessarily and say, hey, this is how to be a fire officer. People already know that. They already have that theory in their mind. It should just be the group work just to do the talk about naysayers and get into a little bit of arguments between each other for the classes, just so that you're not a yes person at the end. You can challenge each other.
And I can say that about, that's the one kind of nice thing about the Fire Officer 1 class through the academy that to do is, obviously we're on 2 hours for 2 days a week for 2 hours at a time. Sometimes they get some people and they just, through the academy, they try to bring in different people, talk about this and that on topics, and they were their own PowerPoints. They really didn't follow the book or anything. You kind of were expected to do that on your own. And it was kind of nice, but it would always seem like, and it's probably the same thing if you were in person, but just a lot of interest. It seemed like somebody would get on I don't want to say a tangent, for lack of a better term, because it was useful information. Saying somebody would start talking about something that would go on and on and on and on, and sometimes you can only talk about something for so long, which you can also do when you're in person. But
hey, this feels eerily similar to what we're doing. Never mind, go on. But this is voluntary, and you don't get a cert for this.
I'm just trying to sound all good and all that, but it was funny because what really amazed me was the amount either for the academy or the state fire marshal's office in some capacity, like not even a firefighter per se, just a person there. And one person told me that like this state base had made them take it because they had to do something while all this COVID stuff was going on, because a lot of stuff was closed down and they were still getting paid, so they do something. So they made them all take like fire officer classes and stuff like that. So
What book are you guys using?
Jones and Bartlett, the third edition. I forget what let me grab it here.
I always wanted to see what the ISTA curriculum looked like, but I can't complain right now because Jones and Bartlett gave me the instructor toolkit for no price.
Well, that's good.
That makes it easy.
Yeah, it's
Easy
just
choice.
Get what you pay for.
fire officer principles and practice. That's the one that it is.
Gotcha.
You
Yeah,
see that.
that's the one we're using.
And I'll lead into a quick plug because I should have hit this off the top, but I'll mention it now. Originally we were hoping to do an actual like in class in somewhere, some auditorium or something, in person discussion about search because of our For Them residential search weekend that's coming up in April. And the family of Mike's friend, actually all of Mike's friends or this family's all of Mike's friends rather, Mike Lord. They wanted to talk to firefighters from their perspective of surviving a house fire. And we were hoping to do that in person, but obviously with COVID and things like that, we had to do what a lot of our classes are doing, which is go online. So the good thing is that means we can open it up to a lot more people. So I want to just show you guys where the registration is and what the information is now that registration's open for the For Them residential search weekend. And the speed in terms of why we're doing this in April. Originally, we were hoping to actually do some evolutions at the house where Dominic, or as I've only ever heard him referred to by Mike, Bama Hunt, died in a house fire. We were actually going to use that house to give people an appreciation for what it really looks like, because we spend so much time in burn buildings and in training buildings or even acquired structures, and it's not the same. We still don't get to see that. A couple things got in our way, and it also sounds like the house might not be there. So we're going to use pictures. We're going to use some video interviews we shot with the family to kind of convey that. But that's why this was in such a quick turnaround for this year. Hopefully we'll continue this trend on and have a little more heads up, but we're hoping to get as many people as we can. So just go to fireground4.com and click on that link at the very top of the page. And this kind of gives the background story. That's Teresa. She's Bama's fiance who made it out, woke up her 15-year-old son, also who was also upstairs just in the bedroom next door to Bama. And those two made it out and he didn't. And Teresa's the one who's been amazing at sharing her story with us. She's got a military background. She was a volunteer firefighter for a short time and a while ago, and she understands the benefit of sharing the story and sharing her experience for us to have that appreciation for us to get better. This is the breakdown of the events, the webinar, again, because we'd rather do it in person, but hey, if we can do it online because we have to, then we can open it up to more people. The webinar is April 9th from 6 to 10, and then hands-on training is in Rossford, Ohio now, and you can buy the tickets right on the same page. So tickets for the hands-on training include the seminar. That's $100 for the whole weekend. So you get 4 hours of essentially classroom discussion, training online, and then 2 full days of hands-on training in an acquired structure that is going to be full of furniture and full of real smoke. We're not lighting it on fire, but we're going to make this as realistic as possible to recreate those conditions. We're going to start from the basics on day 1 and work our way up from there until we're doing full, all out, like everyone's going to be exhausted search evolutions. It's going to be intense. It's going to be realistic. And it's going to be in part driven by the things that this family wants us to think about from their perspective. So you can sign up by just going to fireground4.com, clicking that link at the top of the page, and all the information's right there. You can check out right at the website. We have 34 spots still open. And for the webinar itself, I'll go all the way back down again. We have 400 some seats still. And that's just because we maxed it out. If people want to come, they want to come, and all the money that we raised from this, another reason we maxed out those available seats, all the money we raised from this, we're going to cover the equipment costs and things like that we have to do to build up the house or to do different things. But most of the furniture is getting donated. Most of all the instructors are donating their time. All the rest of the money is going to go to the family and help them as they rebuild after this fire. So please especially for those of you guys who are on here regularly, if you can share this link, get the word out there. It's in Northwest Ohio. It's in a month. And it's going to be just a kick-ass weekend of, you know, realistic, no elephant trunks, no nonsense. Like, we're doing this for them. That's where I got the name, search training. So please share it. And Chad, if you could put a link in the chat, that would be awesome. Or I might be able to real quick while I'm still talking. Let's see if I can multitask. So again, not exactly what we wanted to do, because we feel like the passion could be better fed if we're not all staring at a computer screen, but we've got to do what we got to do. And I think one of the things that's really going to drive the passion that we don't always get a chance to include in our classes is emotion. To hear her story, we recorded, she walked us through the house and just started telling her story. And I'm like, do you mind if I record this on my phone, just so I've got it, so we know what happened, and so we can kind of guide our training that way? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. And she walked us through the whole thing. And just to hear the things that came out of her mouth and hear the things that she's like, you know, I want firefighters to know this. That is going to ramp up, I think, even an online class. That's going to be a different kind of experience. So I hope you guys can attend. And realistically, if we get 35 people signed up, we may be able to extend this, you know, and add other days if we can. If people can't make it that day, if we could fill it, we can make a push to do more. So there we go. People have been having trouble getting into the kitchen table talk lately, but Dan Turner just joined us, and I'll wait for him to connect because this is a great tie-in. I just want to make sure he's cool talking about it. Dan, are you there? Dan Turner.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, sorry. Yeah, it didn't pop up that you were waiting till
Sorry
a
about
couple
that.
seconds after. No, you're fine. But hey, we're just wrapping up the gist of the For Them residential search weekend, how to sign up, what we're doing. And do you mind talking about what happened this week? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
All right, give us what you can tell us.
Sure. So, I want to say it was Friday morning. Friday morning about 4:30, we had banged out for a house fire. I was at work. I was driving the engine. We got a four-man engine company. So the alert drops, you know, like I said, at 4:30 for the house fire. We know, like, generally speaking, if you get a box between 1 and 7, it's on fire. I mean, it's legit. There's something about that time frame for us that
Even in
if
Loudoun
you hear
County.
it drop.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, even in Loudoun County. Yeah, that's the ticket in Loudoun County. During the day, it's nothing. You know, if it's before midnight, not on fire. But if it's between 1 and 7, it's off. So we get banged out for this fire. Kind of sketchy notes on it. Something about, you know, something on fire in the basement, but really unsure about what's going on. As we're going down the road, I'm, you know, like I said, I was driving. The officer looks over and he goes, "Hey, now they're saying people trapped." We're like, "Okay." We're running a third due engine company on this box, so our job is.
I'm gonna pop in real quick, Dan, and ask you a question. When your officer looked over at you and said that, what changed in your head? To kind of give us
Nothing.
How? What? What do you mean nothing?
Nothing.
Explain.
There's people trapped at every fire till we determine there's not. Nothing changed.
That you got heads nodding all over the place if you're not watching that video. Anyway, go on. I did not mean to interrupt. I just wanted to see if anything did.
Every fire is an offensive fire with people trapped until proven otherwise. So our job as third due engine is to cover site Charlie. So we position the next block over, position and take our own water, and then we run a long line through some backyards in order to make site Charlie. So we arrive, you know, in order as third due, as the first and second due are arriving on site Alpha. They're reporting a 2-story single family with fire from the roof, and they'd be out doing a 360. So they got met with occupants out front. saying that the mother was trapped in the basement. Bond 360 found it's 2 stories in the front, 3 stories in the rear with the walkout basement, which is extremely common for us. That's our bread and butter. With fire coming from the basement.
Say that one more time, a little slower, for those of us who don't live in your area.
Okay, so
just the description of the building
in our area, especially most of the houses in our area are 2-story houses on side Alpha, and then there's a grade change from side Alpha to side Charlie along the house. So the house is actually in the backside. They're 3 stories, but it's because the basement has a sliding glass door or a regular residential door that gives access to the basement. Almost all of our 2-story single families are that way, where you have some sort of basement access inside Charlie, either walk up steps or you walk outside and you're on the level ground. So this house, like I said, 2-story single family, 2-story on side Alpha, 3 stories on side Charlie. It's 3 stories because of the walkout basement. So that's part of you give your side Charlie report. That's part of what you denote is 2 stories on side Alpha, and then you go give your side Charlie, 3 stories in the rear with a walkout basement. So everyone knows, it's basement 1, 2 is how you're going to label this.
And I know this fire was before your time, but the Meadowood Court fire was a big attention drawing fire for departments across the country, and that was in your department's jurisdiction. And so that
was in Loudoun County. That was in Leesburg, which really made an emphasis for 360s. Yeah. Irrelevant of what you're dispatched to, you're going to do a 360. Of course, if it's medical, you're not going to. If you get dispatched for a fire event, you're going to do a 360. That's the first engine officer to do. The first truck officer, it's their discretion if they would like to do one or not. At home, I do one as well. If I'm, the first special service, I'll do a lap myself, but it's really up to the first special service officer to make that designation if they would like to or not. So we know, we got a confirmed occupant trapped in the basement, fire shown to the basement. First engine stretches on the front door. The second engine, because the first engine has their own water in the court, the second engine is able to completely abandon their rig. So the driver gets dressed too and integrates in with the crew of the second new engine. And they stretch an attack line off of the first news engine to side Charlie. They make side Charlie knowing, this is where the bulk of the fire is. And this is where we need to pretty much make our stand. So they have the option to take their line there. We position as they're running their line, we're coming through on side Charlie as well. Like I said, we position the next block over, and then we do what we got to do to make access. So we end up going through some fences. We ran our 400. We positioned for our own water, and then to take our own water, and we ran our 400 through some backyards to make access. Ran back, charged the line. The guys pushed inside. The basement was pretty going. I mean, there's pretty good fire going down there. Like I said, enough to have fire come out of it. The engine officer found my engine officer found the trapped occupant, grabbed onto her. He thought honestly she was gonna be crispy. She was not. He called out to the other engine officer that was down there with them to come help him, and the both of them removed her. Called out to the head of victim, called command that of victim, and then removed the occupant from the house. CPR is initiated, and then they got ROSC, and she got transported. I think right now she's in the burn center. She's still alive, I think. She's pretty banged up. But all in all, it was pretty good work by the guys. They had her out in about 10 minutes. I believe it was about 10 minutes after dispatch, I believe. And so then we had the victim removed. So
10 minutes from dispatch.
Yeah.
She was out of the building and already being worked on.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Talk about the layout of the basement in regards to her survival, or her, obviously currently hoping for the best that she does survive this. But what was it about the basement that made it a situation where your officer's predictions weren't exactly what it panned out to be?
Yeah, so the basement, a lot of our basements here are finished basements. They give homeowners the option to pretty much rent out that space. It's not common to see on Craigslist finished basements for sale, or some variation of finished basements on sale or for rent. So it was a finished basement. It was kind of cut up, had some dividing walls. She was found not in the main fire room, but off of the main fire room, with a partially closed door protecting her from the main fire room. She went down there to retrieve something, and then, fell victim to the smoke.
And
so by that point, go ahead.
I was going to say, she went to the basement to get her dog, right? Or that was what she told dispatch. Can we talk about the dispatch interaction? Is that fair? I don't want to mess anything up that's going on right now. They upgraded it.
I'm not sure. Yeah, they did. So basically, what dispatcher said, she was the initial caller, saying that the couch was on fire in the basement. She was trying to get the kids out, and that she went back. If she got the kids out, she went back in to get the dogs. So dispatcher is pretty Johnny on the spot. Heard, was trying to tell her to stay outside. She wouldn't do it. She went inside to, obviously to get the dogs. They heard her go silent. And then they heard what they believed was agonal respirations, which is why they upgraded to structure fire keep trapped.
And when you said that to me, that was like this huge trigger trip of like, holy crap, how many, you guys have a squared away communication center that's countywide, but how many agencies might be so busy or overwhelming a dispatcher that's working that might have been something that slipped through the cracks. And that was, like you said, Dan, you're going there with the mindset you've got people trapped. That's the right way to go into it, is to just assume the worst. To paraphrase Nick Martin, it's the fire of your career until proven otherwise. Wear your shit, be ready to get victims, be ready to throw ladders, and then you can slow down from there. It's a lot easier to slow down than it is to speed up. But
for sure. I mean,
the extra,
yeah, it's down the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easier to take your gear off slowly than it is to put it on in a hurry. I've noticed. But still getting that extra information from dispatch and having dispatchers that are passing that information along to say, hey, she said she was going back to the basement and she's gone silent, or just, yeah, we think the caller's trapped in the basement. How, and this is not an outside thought thing, unless you guys really feel like it needs to be, but think to yourselves, would your own dispatch, regardless of the reason, whether it's systemic or individuals or whatever, would your own dispatch pick up on that? That's a huge piece of information.
Like I said, they really killed it. They really, it's really good they picked up on that.
Yeah. And I love that they did. I just think it's a great learning point for other people to think, especially when you're looking at a targeted search. We talk about, and not to steal, we're going to talk about this regardless if we're going to recap some of it later, but, looking at, are there cars in the driveway? Okay. That's a pretty good indicator, but is it 10 in the morning? Oh, maybe people are going to be at work. Well, that's when this fatal happened that killed Bama. Is it, is somebody, we're going to search the bedrooms first. I sleep on my couch like 2 or 3 nights a week. All these things that we think are like go-tos and these are like the checkbox answers that we do in fire class to say, well, are there kids' toys in the front yard? I don't know. Maybe the parents clean them up. Why would we use that as a determining factor or something to like, oh, well, there aren't toys in the front yard. I'm going to take a deep breath and assume there's not kids inside. and maybe we're still going to go to the search, but we lose some of that mindset. And I think we get that false sense of security from stuff like that. And, you know, what are the, like when you said it was when you texted me or texted the group actually of the Fireground Training Bureau group, as we're planning this search class, and you texted us at 5 a.m. and said, hey, we had a grab from a fire last night. And first thing I said was it VES? And you said, no, it was from the basement. And I'm like, oh crap. And I'm thinking Northwest Ohio basements, where most of them aren't going to be a walkout, and you got to drag a victim up the stairs at some point, whether you wait for the fire to be out and shelter in place for now, or are you in the basement where the fire started? Now you've got to shelter in place there and then figure out how you're going to get the victim up the stairs. You know, and all these different things going in my head, but it's like, also, how often do we think about making the basement a priority for search? But then how often are we going into basements for EMS runs for somebody whose bedroom's down there, or for somebody who's renting the basement, or, you know, kids that when they were younger wanted some independence and the basement was the way to go. Like, and our parents were dumb enough to let us have the run of the basement. It just those sort of things that I feel like sometimes we get so stuck in our ways of thinking like, yeah, we need to search Division 1 and Division 2 because who's going to be in the attic or who's going to be in the basement. And just a week or two ago, there was somebody in an attic that was sticking out the gable end. I can't remember what city it was in off the top of my head, but I saw a news article on it. It was a legit story, but that's where he went because he had to get away from fire and apparently couldn't make it out the front door. People are going to go wherever they need to go. And in this instance, it sounds like she was going to save something, to try and make something better. Or maybe she thought she could get out that back door when she got down there. But people aren't going to do what we expect them to do. We are calm in these situations. How many of you guys have had like somebody in your family or somebody near you in public have a medical emergency, and you walk up and just like, you give them the slap on the back, or you're just watching to see if it's going to be legit. And as soon as it happens, everybody like, you know, starts panicking, except for us, right? There are plenty of things we can study about human behavior in terms of stress reactions and how their brain might work in a fire, but we really don't know. And the more we try and make it make sense, I think the more we set ourselves up for failure, because we're, you know, yes, we can still have high target areas, right? We can still have the area right around the fire, which attacks should hopefully be taken care of. We still have, yeah, am I expecting more likely to find people in the upstairs bedroom than I am in the basement? Sure. But that doesn't mean that we like let our guard down and, oh, we'll get to the basement when we get to it. And I guess that was kind of my takeaway from your story, Dan. One of many, because that's why I love sharing this kind of stuff, is like, what are all the nuggets we can pull out of this? What are all the little things that it's like, oh my God, I never thought of that. I never, you know, the importance of dispatch. And now I'm thinking even maybe we do need to invite some dispatchers out to our training to see what that looks like on this end when it is the worst of the worst, you know, when it is the worst case scenario and they are, you know, hearing crews go in. Just random cameos from former students. So anybody else have any questions for Dan? If he can answer them. I know like I said, Dan, sorry for putting you on the spot. I know it was just something that happened a couple days ago. What was the conversation like getting back to the engine house? Turner.
I'm sorry, say that one more
Oh
time.
yeah, what was the conversation like on the way back or at the engine house?
Yeah, I mean, so you know, we got back. You know, there's a lot of discussion of like what did you do? Just looking at each other, you know, making sure that we were all basically on the same page about what just went on. You know, I mean, pretty quickly got, you know, the fire marshal's office came in and started doing their thing. You know, the fire marshal's office started doing their own investigation and such. You know, but the conversation was like, you know, basically where'd you find her? You know, what did you do? And how did it all work out? So the backup guy ended up helping both engine officers make the removal while the linemen stayed on line to protect them. Not they really needed it. They had the fire pretty much licked at that point. Mm-hmm. But he stayed, you know, in place on the line so he could continue mopping up while they made the removal, you know. I mean, I think part of the conversation is like, we don't run very many fires in Loudoun County. That's just the fact of the matter is we don't run many working fires. We run probably about 80 working fires a year, and well over half of them are handled by the first engine, first truck. It's cool if they're handled that quickly. At the same time, it's also kind of hurting experience across the whole county. And like I said, that's just unfortunately, it's just the fact of the matter is.
Mm-hmm.
That said, for us to have an offensive fire people trapped, I think we did pretty good work, and it's something we've been preparing for really since before most of us worked for Loudoun County when we were volunteering, or even in rookie school when we were preparing, searching closets in rookie school, because that's where they would hide the kid, is in the closet, the dummy kid. So it feels like it's been literally years in the making for this one fire. A lot of high fives going around, and good work and everything. And then, but still, looking critically about what we could do differently at the next event.
Which is also part of our responsibility. If we don't look like that, if we think that everything went as well as it could have, we are kidding ourselves in any situation.
Right. And I think we were kind of kidding on the phone earlier, like there's a lot of times, one of the issues with doing debriefs is that someone is always going to say, well, fire went out and everyone went home, which is true, but it doesn't mean there's not stuff for us to learn to take away from that fire, for next time to be able to do things a little differently.
And like I told you, I'm okay with that phrase. If you like in that case, when you said it in terms of this fire, it's like, yeah, everyone went home, the fire went out. And also the victim came out of the house, and we gave the victim you guys gave the victim their last best chance. And I collectively add the we, because we as the fire service that are, pushing the aggressive searches and things like that, that's the point, the last best chance for those victims. I'm trying to think of a way to word this question. If you said there was a lot of fire blowing out the Charlie side basement on arrival, correct?
Yeah, it was blowing out the basement doors, getting up into the first floor and the second floor.
So if that had been the determination to say, this is defensive, or this is not survivable, right? We hear that a lot, or see that a lot on Facebook posts when you see a lot of fire. And I think there's a judgment lapse in some instances where you don't necessarily realize how little water it can take to put out a lot of visual fire. Now, yeah, we still want to outgun the fire, but I feel like the 2.5 gets pushed a little hard sometimes in terms of residential. Commercial all day, absolutely, no problem. And 2.5 on a residential, sure. If you think you need it, absolutely. Know the pros and cons like anything else. But sometimes I think we overestimate, especially if we don't see it as often, or if we've gotten that kind of Facebook level training, right? Where it's, hey, look at this picture and tell me, are you going to go or no go? And it's like that. Well, that's bullshit. I can't see a lot of other things about it. And if you start pushing me in that direction, especially when then people are going to jump on and say, well, no, that's a write-off all day. Nobody could survive that room. How do you know that nobody can survive that room? And I think this fire specifically, talking to you about it, where this person was in a basement that had fire blowing out of it, but was behind a partially closed door and still had a chance. If you guys had found, I don't want to do it that way.
Maybe Barrett, I think this might help get to what you're trying to get to.
I'm trying not to change the facts of your fire, but go. So yeah, that's why I'm struggling here, because you guys from everything kick butt on this, and I don't want to take away from that. But Barrett, I want to throw a hypothetical.
I think sometimes there can be, as an author is doing their 360, they're looking for a reason to not go in. They're looking for, this one thing that for us to not make entry in this house and do a search. When in reality, we should be looking for one reason to go in,
to go in to make entry into that house. I'm not trying to say it's, people should be going on a suicide mission. Not at all. If it's not good, it's not good. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
But the guys are looking for a reason to be able to make a push into this basement and found it pretty quickly. And they did it. Could there have been, yep, that's not survivable. Sure. They could have. That's also not really our determination to make. There's been people throughout this country that have called 911 from inside their house on fire and has reported their house to be on fire and that they are still inside. We should really give them every chance that we can because there's no one else coming. It's really up to us. The National Guard is not going to parachute and do a search of a house. It'd be cool. It is completely up to us. It would be kind of cool. Although I'd probably get jealous, honestly, super quick.
Yeah.
I'd be trying to put the National Guard in service coming down the road. We tell people to close before they doze. And we post all these things on Facebook like that. But if we're not going to come for them, then why bother telling them? Hey, close before your doze. Close your door before you go to bed at night. So it's longer for you to die because it's too scary. Fire's scary. We're just not going to go inside.
Is that looking for a reason to go in? Is that yours or is that something you picked up from somewhere? Just because I know I love that phrase and I want to make sure I know where it came from because I'm probably going to use that again.
I'm sure that someone else has said it. I'm not really sure who. I think I've kind of adopted it as what's the point of telling people close before you doze? Yeah, this is your best chance at survival, but we're not going to come for you.
Well, and I think that's
because on my structural analysis on my 360, there's a lot of smoke coming out of the house, and I don't think anybody could survive that. Well, then you must just tell them to sleep their doors open so they die faster.
Not to be blunt or anything, but no, and I think that's where our conversations, me riding with you and you riding with me and talking about what we're looking for on 360s. Because at that point, when I'm riding with you and your duty buggy and you're riding with me in the duty officer car, when we were doing that stuff, and we were relying on each other, I think we knew, we're looking for those options for VES and not the, the mom meeting us outside saying, go in that window. He's right there to the right side, 3 feet in. But does this look like a place we can search because there's fire from every other hole of the house? And I don't mind losing the house if we searched everywhere we might have been able to find someone. And that's one of the things that, especially when we talk about like limited staffing, I was just doing an instructor class and that came up, and smart guy, smart firefighter. You could tell his heart's really into it. But we talked about assignments and in his presentation for this instructor class, and it was, I think, an engine, a truck, and a battalion chief, or the equivalent of a battalion chief, arriving to a first due fire, and he had a picture of it. And I asked him to send it to me, but he hasn't yet. But I nerded out. I'm looking at this going, yeah, get your search done. Get your search done. And if all you have is 2 people on a medic unit, that's a discussion Dan and I've had before working in Rossford, where if it's the 2 of us on a medic unit and we come across a house fire, we're going to go in and take a water can because we have that. We have our gear. We have our PPE. We're better prepared than our citizens inside. We're going to go in and do a search. And then you know what? If we've searched everywhere that doesn't have fire blowing out of it, then if the house goes, the house goes. I'm still for taking some risk for property because that's part of our oath too. But at the very least, we're not going to wonder if that person could have survived. And this is what I was getting at with you earlier, Dan, is, if in a similar situation, let's take it away from your incident, similar situation, or maybe the exact same circumstances somewhere else in the country, and somebody says we're not going in, only to find out that person was protected by a door that protected them longer than they realized. And then they have to wonder, did we actually do what this citizen was expecting us to do? Or did they die because of our inaction? I'd rather get the push back and realize, you know what, we can't make it in there, than wonder the rest of my life, did we really give that citizen their best chance? I did have one comment asking for Chief K's perspective. They just got a call, so we'll hold on to that as things tend to work out. Anybody else have anything pop into their head as we've been talking about this? Any stories you guys want to share?
Actually, it's not a story, but
Yeah.
a comment on one of the things that Dan shared. That they have kind of a understanding that it's customary to rent out those lower rooms, and I think anybody who's been to any fires of note, sometimes from the outside we forget the difference between a content fire and a structure fire.
Yes.
So if I know that a basement is a living area, chances are it's drywall. The amount of thermal protection that creates to keep it contained to a content fire, where you could have a couch or something that's right below a window that makes it look like the whole flipping basement is rolling, and it's not. It's just the couch or just the curtains or just one wall at that point, and it hasn't penetrated to the structure. So from a safety standpoint, if I know I'm going into an unfinished basement that's rolling, I'm going to approach that far differently as far as deciding go or not than I am going into a finished room. A finished room is going to have content involvement before it has structure involvement, versus you go into an unfinished basement and now you're dealing with dryer vent or HVAC coiled wire after all the tubing is melted off. And even still, maybe you got a half a finished basement and the lady was found in a separate room. Maybe she got down and couldn't get to the dog and tried to bail to the mechanical room and close the door behind her. Who knows? It's still a potentially safe haven or shelter in place area, whether it's finished or not. But content fires, because of what's burn like you got the whole damn structure rolling, and you'll get a similar smoke. You'll get that brown, shitty chugging just because of what it is burning. It doesn't necessarily mean the building's going to collapse, where people say, oh, we're not going in there because the building's going to come down on us. Well, if you can do some recon and talk to the people outside or whatever, somebody can, try and find out, hey, how's the basement laid out? Is there a stairwell going upstairs? Is there 2 stairwells? Because some basements have front and rear, or, one interior and one exterior, tornado doors, all that kind of crap.
Mm-hmm.
So just a point of thought that, knowing your area. And I guess I'm also, I'm impressed that you guys got a 400-foot lay on your trucks. We bitch about loading 200 feet. So 400-foot lay, 1.5 inches is, I'd hate to have to do the triple load method on that. So.
You guys are Minuteman on that, right, Turner?
We are, yeah. So
Okay.
we run it 100 drag, 150 shoulder, 150 shoulder, Minuteman. It's my favorite line. It's awesome. And we run that as 2-inch, so it's not the pump pressure, the discharge pressure. It's not anything that's ridiculous. So that's sometimes is some people's concern. I guess my other thing, with the staffing, I work in an area that the guys really care about getting out quickly. If you put out a box, everyone is out the door usually between 30 seconds and a minute. Usually a little more during the night, but everyone really cares about getting out on the road quickly and basically drag racing there. Nothing unsafe, but trying to get there as fast as we can. But that said, it'd be blind to not acknowledge the staffing that we have. That basically, for the most part, the entire assignment arrives on scene within a minute of each other. We, as third due, we probably pulled in 30 seconds after first and second, who arrived almost simultaneously. So, with a limited staffing area, it's a completely different ballgame. And it'd be, to not acknowledge that would be foolish. We're just very fortunate to have, the homeowner, very fortunate to have a very aggressive and slightly competitive response coming down the road. That has the mindset, like I said, of the offensive fire with people trapped.
And I wouldn't say it's a completely different ball game. The priorities never change. across the board. Not to argue with you, but I'm going to argue with you. The like the priorities are the same no matter what department you're on, right? It still says fire department on the side of the rig, and like obviously extinguishment. You know, we're gonna have to juggle a little more. And again, not speaking from, I know the department I'm on is the same way that Turner's department is. You got 4 engines, a truck, a battalion chief, and a safety officer on scene within, 4 minutes of the fire and another minute of being on scene. And we're lucky that way. But I've also been incident command with Turner as my aide on a fire where we're sitting there going, where's the rig? And then we're debating going up there with a can and trying to put it out ourselves because it's taken so long for that rig to get staffing to roll out the door. And I think that's where, instead of focusing on, well, we're so short-handed. Well, no, your priorities become more important then. That's what you need to focus on.
I agree, but I also think that the time it takes to get on scene for shorter staff or rural departments, you're obviously going to factor in more fire development,
yes,
less survivability, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to come into question of, it's like when ice or a drowning goes from a rescue to a recovery scenario of if it takes 15 minutes for the rural department to get on scene, establish water, et cetera, or 10 minutes for a rural department to get on scene, establish water, depending on staffing and who shows up and what level of skill they are. I think you have to factor some of that in as to how aggressively or maybe where you're going to begin your search.
Yes. And that's what I was going to say.
Like you brought up earlier, where
yes,
let's skip the fucking closets and everything else, start from the seat of the fire and work our way out.
Or if you have fire blowing from every other hole in the house, like not even just windows, but every door, every window, everything, and you've got one room that doesn't, you break that glass, see what happens. If fire blows out, right, that was ready to flash. If it doesn't, you've got one room to search, and then whatever else happens. But I guess that's where you're absolutely right that you have to factor it in. But I think that's where your priorities and being quick and efficient is almost more important. You have to be better at your job in the places you're doing it less, and you have fewer people to do it. And that's not necessarily a fair thing to put on us, but that's the reality. And I think the focus on life needs to be forefront in that. If all you can do is a search, if you're having water supply issues and you're having issues getting another rig on scene, or you're having issues with whatever challenges are presented by the fact that you're behind the 8 ball already as a home response rural department, then see where you can search. And if it's one person throwing a ladder and VESing the whole second floor, then we need to be okay with that, because we still have accountability of that person. And if that other person is going to be the one to go in and get them, then that's fine too. But we also have to step back from that and go, okay, if we put one person in there, there's a chance that one person's not coming out. But if we put 2 people in there, that doesn't improve the chances. If we put 2 people in and have 2 people standing outside, what's to say that you send the 2 people in and they don't come out either? We could, what if, how deadly this could be for our firefighters the whole time, but we're not there for us.
You can absolutely overthink it. What Dan would, when you asked him the question to begin, that's if nothing else more brilliantly is said, what Dan said of, until proven otherwise, every single fire response we go on is a victim trap. Yeah. I think if you start with that as your standard assumption, as your standard practice, that I don't give a shit what dispatch says. I don't care how many toys are in the yard, how many vehicles, what time of day, somebody's in that house. If you approach it from there, while you may do some things wrong, you can't go wrong.
Yes.
Putting the citizen or their, survivability or chance of, because we've all watched the UL videos of the, close before you doze. They're, 5, 6, 7, 10 minutes into fire development, and then put it out. And then they, drop the whole side of the building, and you see that one room, and it's remarkable. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I got 4 stepdaughters that did not want to sleep with doors closed, et cetera, until they got the teenagers, and then they wanted to stay in the room all day. But that video was remarkable. So I really, everything that Dan has said so far is stuck.
Go ahead, Dan. You want to weigh in?
I think we had an event that also really helped set us up for this, and that was a couple months ago. I got overtime on the rescue out of my station, and we ended up running a fire. That's 7:00 in the morning, and a 2-story strip shopping mall. So fire and end unit, kitchen fire. The kitchen is pretty going. No sprinklers in this building, so I mean it was a pretty good job. The first engine got a quick knock on it. So I was riding, our rescue rides with 4 people, or our heavy rescue or rescue squad. Rescue's not an ambulance. Rides with 4 people. And the rescue, we split into 2 crews. So the driver and the guy that rides behind him are a group, and the officer and the guy that rides behind him are a group. So we have like Rescue 635 and Rescue 635 X-ray. The X-ray will go is the driver and the guy that rides behind him. The driver's not an officer, but it's 2 dudes that run around and get stuff done. Whatever needs done or needs covered, those 2 guys will take care of. So they can address ventilation, might check an exposure, searches the floor above. So for this event, we ended up being we checked the exposure quick, make sure there's no fire in there. Gave a side chart report, and then did secondary searches on the unit that was above the fire. That unit was actually a bike shop that was up there. Pretty good smoke. I mean, it was pretty dark up there, but no fire. But something that was really, really remarkable is the guy that owned the bike shop had been having some marriage issues. So he hasn't been sleeping at home. He's been sleeping in the back room of the bike shop. He's got a little bed in there. He's got a little microwave. He wasn't home, or he wasn't there at the bike shop. But imagine if it was, 7:00 in the morning, we see this commercial building, and we just write it off as there being no one inside there. I mean, we found damn near a full apartment upstairs. We also found a porn studio down on the first floor. Again, I think people
was
would have
access to that the front door or the back door.
Well done. But people would have said, looked at it and said, there's probably nobody in there. It's too early for normal businesses to open up. There's no one in there, especially if we would have run that in the middle of the night. I know for me and the guy that I was with, that kind of put the mindset, really drove home the mindset of, man, there really could be anybody in here, regardless of what the occupancy is, regardless of time of day. There potentially could be somebody in here. The guy wasn't home. He wasn't in his bike shop, but if he was, we would have been pretty shocked to find him. And I don't know every building in my area. It's impossible. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know what's going on with each person.
And just by looking at you can tell you wouldn't know where the porn studio was.
No, definitely not. We were even more surprised to find the porn studio. It was definitely the talk of the day. I'm like, look at this place.
Didn't you guys take the line in and then bring it back out, and then take the line in and then bring it back out, and then take the line in and then bring it back out and spray all over the outside of the building?
Yes. Yeah.
Whew.
A bakery with a porn studio.
This is. Well, either way, you're going to see some nice puns.
What's that?
How did you know it was a porn studio?
It was clear looking at what was in the room that it was a porn
by the taste.
Yeah, actually by the taste. Yeah, very salty.
Nothing
room.
For 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we were just, we were like, dude, did you see that? Go back in there. Go back in there. Yeah, like the RIT team's going inside to go look at the room, just out of curiosity.
This leads into another discussion. Maybe not so much the porn studio, but this death trap idea that keeps getting spread around Facebook. And this is, where is he, Kevin? If you could switch your image to the soapbox, it's appropriate now. This pisses me off because we've got Facebook training pages that are sharing great information, And then they go on about how engineers and architects and people are trying to kill firefighters. Do you really think they're trying to kill firefighters? Or do you think they're just doing their job and they're trying to find cheap and efficient ways to build or design? Or it's like, we have two responsibilities as I see it. One, to get involved in the codes process and make changes to the building code or push for changes in the building code if we see issues that are arising. Things like, hey, let's get sprinklers into residential houses and make that a requirement because of the number of lives it could save, ours included, but more importantly, the citizens. So getting involved in the codes process and changing the laws is number one. Number two is we're not going to change anything besides doing number one. So instead of just calling them death traps or bitching about it, let's, study them and realize that things are changing. But I think that there's this like, oh, look what they're doing to us. No, there are buildings that have been death traps for 200 years that are just whatever. I just don't understand this idea of, oh, they're building things out of wood I-beams now. They're trying to kill us. No, they're not. They're trying to make cheaper houses, or they're running out of thick trees. Shit happens. Roll with it. Understand the risks. But to pull this death trap nonsense, just I swear that was a quote that somebody said these houses are death traps. We're going into burning buildings. I think they're all death traps by default. Literally, they're deadly places to be if you don't know what the hell you're doing, or don't know what you're up against, or don't have PPE, or
no one
don't
needs
train.
to go on a mission, but your safety is also not guaranteed.
What was the first part, Dan?
No, we're not asking anyone to go on a suicide mission, but your safety is not guaranteed.
Absolutely.
There's going to be risk.
Yeah, and I think there's that. I don't know. I feel like it takes away from our responsibilities by just saying, oh, they're out to kill us. Bullshit, they're out to kill us. Chief, you got something in your mind?
Yeah, first I think you should change it to Peter Griffin's, it really grinds my gears. And I think we need to be more worried about houses on zero lot lines than building construction in general.
Ooh, explain this to us.
The newer houses that you see that have zero lot lines to them only have like maybe a 8 to 10 foot difference between the houses, if that. So if there's a structure fire in a brand new house, you're not going to just have one structure fire. You're possibly going to have 3 structure fires on top of that. So drive around brand new subdivisions, they're trying to they're increasing the rates on the properties, and they're also increasing the number of houses in the subdivisions. They're all around.
And what dictates that distance? Is that
each municipality?
Okay. So that's
each municipality. Well, yeah, each municipality sets their standards, but then like if a developer goes into a meeting for zoning or planning, they can request special permissions, and then sometimes they're granted.
How do we get more involved, especially knowing, Chief, that you're big on the inspection side? How do we get better involved in those zoning meetings and those discussions? And I know we've gone from talking about saving people from burning buildings to zoning meetings. I realize everyone needs to take another sip out of their coffee before we keep going. But if we're going to talk about responsibilities, prevention's part of that. So how do we get more involved or make sure? Because I mean, can you be at every zoning meeting realistically to jump in and say, I don't know, that's a good idea?
No, but one thing that we do is as an inspector, depending on how your fire prevention bureau is at your department, you look at every single subdivision that comes into your area, and then if they're gonna be dicey, then you do go to the meetings, and then you provide input. It's no different than a commercial structure.
Mm-hmm.
You got a commercial structure that you look at everything, the whole plot layout of the building itself and the property, to see where you want hydrants at, where you want the FTC at. It's just not, hey, I'm an engineer or a designer or architect. I'm going to design it and it's going to go through. So just go to your meetings and pay attention to them.
So our role with residential is more you get to see the suburb or the neighborhoods themselves planned out, the subdivisions planned out.
Correct.
And that's where you've got to look for those things that maybe we're so focused on plan reviews for commercial buildings sometimes that stuff doesn't get the same attention that it should.
Correct. That's no different than cul-de-sacs or dead ends. You know, you can stipulate that you're not going to have a subdivision with a dead end in it or one way in and one way out. You can stipulate a cul-de-sac. You can stipulate a T turnaround. That's all in the Ohio Fire Code book. What the minimum radiuses is.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just not, you know, grabbing.
But you have to get your political
fire.
authorities to buy in on it too, though.
Right.
Correct.
And who wants to push the neighborhoods away to other neighboring cities or townships or municipalities?
Yep.
So the other question is, what do you do about non-zoned areas?
Yeah, that's a toughie. That's a toughie there. Just provide your input. That's the only thing that you can do.
That's half of our district.
Mm-hmm. I guess my point is to say that. Oh, go ahead.
So that's a good 90% of Providence Township's district is non-zoned.
Yeah.
So
all you can do is just stay on top of it. Talk to the people that are going to be building once you catch wind of it, and then provide your input to them, whether they take it or not. I mean, back it up with facts and statistics.
What's the easiest way to catch wind of it? Are there any hoops they've got to be jumping through if it's an unzoned?
I do not know. I'm not really familiar with it.
Yeah, that's new to me. Do you guys know
building permits?
They do have to still go through the county. Okay, so maybe that's building a relationship.
County burning.
They have to do a county building permit, is what you're saying? Sorry, I cut you off twice. Because Chad's the person I'm the rudest to on these calls, even though he's the backbone of these calls. So do you guys have a relationship now, Chad, with the county that if there's a building permit for your area, you guys get notified?
Not so much. Like all the houses on 295 on the bordering district between White House and Providence Township, there's a lot of houses being sprung up in that area, and I haven't seen anything or heard anything from like township notes based on that. If it's a commercial structure, we usually do see permits for those, like when they put Dollar General in Minneapolis. We requested at least a dry sprinkler system in that building, and they denied it, but still built.
Is that a relationship you think would be pretty easy to build? That, hey, if you guys get a building permit for Providence, can you shoot us an email? Or I'm trying to add more to your plate is all I'm really doing.
Yeah. That's a question outside of, that's a question outside of my wheelhouse.
I gotcha. But I guess and all of this to say, there are other ways we can get involved that aren't as sexy or aren't as cool as like training and talking about buildings and bitching about stuff. Like some of it is stuff that we have to be on the front end of, right? And we have to find ways to be in that loop and be in that discussion. You know, it's a far end of the spectrum, but Dan, was it Loudon that was requiring subdivisions to build a fire station at their subdivision?
Yeah. So when a developer would come in and ask to, pretty much come to the county looking for permits and looking for stuff to be done, everything looked good. I mean, they know the developers have been making millions off of these developments and these centers they want, these town centers they want to build, like Levis Commons. Basically, they know they've been making a boatload of money off of it. They would say, hey, look, this all looks great. Here's the thing, we'll approve your permits. The problem is our closest fire station in this area and our closest school in this area is, however many, about five miles away. You can raise the prices of the homes here if you have fire protection or sheriff's office or a school right nearby. We'll approve all of this if you build us a fire station and a school. That's how the fire station that I work at came to fruition. Right now, we sit basically in a field with nothing around us because the developer had to build that first. Right now, in a few years, we're going to have, they're actually building a Wawa gas station right next to us right now. There's going to be a hotel, a daycare, and possibly an IKEA coming to us. That's going to be right across the street from the firehouse.
Now, does it come with instructions, or do you have to figure out how to put it together on your own?
Not having any part of that, I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure you can hire people to put it together, and I think that's probably what the plan is.
Good call. Enjoy the meatballs.
But already they've developed 2 apartment buildings and probably about 50 townhouses down the street from our firehouse. But they had to build the firehouse first, as a part of them being able to develop all that space.
Interesting. Planning ahead. What a novel idea.
Yeah, whack, right?
Well, and so much of that is just getting to be part of that discussion. When we talked about our strategic plan at a department I used to work at and talked about, let's get involved in the zoning discussion. Let's let the mayor know that we need to have a discussion, that if more businesses come in, we need to figure out. And at one point, I believe that was part of a proposed deal was that we would get a fire station for a new development. But that needs to be solidified if that's a plan that might be necessary. But if we're not in those meetings and we're not aware of that opportunity and we're not aware of that potential, whether it's to have a fire station or going back to our original portion of this discussion, just to have these houses 5 feet apart from each other instead of 3 feet apart from each other to give us a little more time, or better yet, 10 or 20 or 30 feet away from each other. And we could have said something, but instead we're doing what the internet is apparently designed to do, and just getting online and complaining about it after the fact, acting like we had nothing we could do about it. And I guess maybe that's what really grinds my gears with this death trap thing is it's like, okay, who's lobbying? who's going to their councils and saying like, hey, maybe we don't have anybody moving in now, but here's what we need to consider. Here's what's going to make our citizens safer. I'm getting direct messages now asking what business it may have been. So I think a lot of what we talk about on here in my mind is what are our responsibilities as firefighters? And I think that's one of them too. And that's why prevention is part of what we do. I'm looking to see. Oh, go ahead.
One thing to note too is to build those relationships, you need to build those relationships with the school districts. Okay. Because the school districts you can back them up and they can back you up for decisions, because there's no point putting in a huge, 500 house subdivision if the school can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and right now with building the firehouse thing, the county loves us right now, and they make that push. It gives a lower ISO rating or whatever, but also makes the county look better. It's safer. The school system is better, and the developer gets to raise prices because there's a elementary school that's a quarter mile away, the next block over, in a park. Perfect. A young family would love that. So you can raise your price a little bit because you got that so close by.
Mm-hmm. Anybody done talking about meetings yet? I feel like I derailed us in a different way. Very important stuff. Not nearly I think you bring up meetings at a kitchen table and things just go haywire. What what other things do you see on Facebook pages that either get your attention? Chad, I think you had one recently. What grabbed your attention the other day that kind of ground your gears?
There's a post going around, what's your size up, and it's 4 solar panels on fire in the middle of a solar farm for say. And then I'm just reading countless comments that are just saying no water on the fire, no water on the fire, keep my crews away, and all this other stuff, when you can put water on the fire. Ideally you need to train on how to put the water on the fire, but the biggest thing is isolate, and they'll burn themselves out. Most likely, as soon as you isolate, the burning problem's going to go away.
And this would be the situation where if you posted that, somebody'd be like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Who are you to be saying this crap? You don't know what you're talking about. Those are dangerous. Would you please enlighten us with your background?
Development engineering technician with First Solar, in charge of field testing, and not allowed to say it, but I'm going to say it. I start solar panels on fire for fun.
Nerd.
That last part was a twist. Is that part of your job or just a
It
hobby?
never happens. It never happens.
Wow. So that's
Actually just called me a pyromaniac. She says you sound like a pyromaniac.
she's not wrong. That's where I think sometimes we lose the benefits to the Facebook training discussions, right? Like we lose some of it because somebody like Chad, who's actually got the expertise, gets overpowered by a bunch of people who've just heard one or two things and freak out or haven't taken. I think I saw you posted a link to the class from NIST. Is that right? UL. Damn it. Okay. Well, whatever.
Yeah. I posted a class
Some
at
of those
UL,
initials.
which basically goes down and says that if you have a 20 feet away with a broken stream fog nozzle, you can put water on a solar panel with 0 chance of being injured. And then I was just, I had to let that post go, and I just posted the training and went on with myself because I would have lost my mind.
But that's what sucks is
everybody.
Your voice doesn't get heard in that mess of people just regurgitating shit they've heard. And that's where I'm
then highly inaccurate voltage limits and all this other stuff and current and all the other stuff. And then it's just like,
any other internet pet peeves?
Yes, Facebook is the epitome of Earth.
The what?
Word choice.
I think I understood what you meant, but I don't think it was exactly what you meant to say. That's all right.
Yeah. Again, I'll say I went to Rogers High School, so
fair enough. And that's where, like I mentioned, I struggle sometimes with the idea of posting stuff on our page, is because it's the disconnect, right? We just kind of went full circle to online learning, that stuff just gets misconstrued.
Jenga.
Oh my God. Why would you trigger me like that? We've already talked about Jenga on here. I'm not doing that crap again. I'm going to lose more friends.
You like to talk over me, so I just like to trigger you.
I don't mean to talk over you. You're just so quiet. And then are you hitting your space bar? Because as soon as I interrupt you, it goes back to mute. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like I kicked a puppy.
Yes.
Excuse me. Oh my goodness. All right. We got a comment from Ed Brown. New fireground training class opportunity. Solar field fire suppression taught by Chad. Chad, just when you wanted more responsibility.
No, I was talking to Jason probably before I broke myself about getting some stuff from First Solar that we're actually throwing away. Just got to figure out how to get it out of the plant and get a scrap pass, because that's a whole other story. But getting one of our panels, a competitor panel, which is the big ones out there, is crystal silicon, where we make glass on glass panels at First Solar, and getting an inverter and disconnect box and figuring out how to hook it up to actually feed everything, so you can learn how to de-energize and maybe find somebody that has the residential requirements in the NEC to do the quick disconnects, that actually float the modules at 0 volts, 0 amps.
Anybody interested in taking a solar panel class down the road?
I feel like I just lost Ian.
Matt-
We just lost our entire audience every
Matt
week.
Welch just totally tuned out. Ed Brown should be on the call. I want to hear his take. He's the one who
No, I
recommended
didn't
it.
tune out. I just like really
Or not
solar
tuned out.
panel class.
Just not
Okay.
interested. Yeah, sorry, I said the wrong
Sorry,
thing.
nothing against solar panels, but they just
The-
not my cup of tea.
The morning session will be solar panels. The afternoon session will be lunar fire operation.
Lunar fire operations.
Panels
Equally
still make
likely from most people's point of view.
I got it. Dang it.
let's say panels still make electricity at night.
Oh, it's gonna be lunar fire operations with that Euro helmet. Definitely looks like you're going to space with that
There
thing.
it is.
If I have to explain the joke, it's not funny, Chad.
Oh my
I was
god.
just walking over you because I can.
Well, I'm hoping Chief K will get back on because I kind of want to talk to him about the differences in his take. Oh, here comes Ed Brown. Perfect.
I gotta be nice to Ed because I need some stuff from him coming up soon.
Oh yeah. All right. We'll wait for him to hop on, and then we're waiting for Chief K to come back. Hopefully, he'll come back. I want to hear his difference, if there are differences in expectations between his volunteer department where he's chief and his full-time department where he's a safety officer in terms of search. So hopefully, we'll be able to revisit that if he's able to pop back on. In the meantime, just waiting for Ed to connect. And Chad says he has to be really nice to you. Oh, he's still connecting. He might be there. I don't know. He's probably listening somewhere.
His audio keeps failing. It looks like
Chad says he needs to be pretty nice to you, Ed. So, and he's gone. Well, we tried. That's what you can expect from the Fireground Training Bureau. Kitchen Table Talk is the most reliable technology we've got access to for $10 a month. Oh, after talking about solar panels, I don't really know that I want to talk about being role models on social media. So let's table that one. We talked about online classes.
Hey, Barrett.
Yeah,
Barrett,
what's on your mind?
Just one last thing about going back and tying in my soapbox of online classes with the part of passion.
Uh-huh.
I didn't really think much about it until just the other day when I don't know, just popped into my head. And I might have said something on here one of the first few times or whatever, but when we were first doing the class, the introduction, they say, why are you taking this class? And of course, I hope to become a better person and a better leader, blah, blah, blah. I made the half joking that because I had nothing else to do with my time because, I'm already a firefighter 2, instructor, the whole 9 yards, EMTB, but I have no desire to become an advanced or paramedic because I could care less to stick a needle in somebody or push a drug. So I decided to take these classes for the heck of it, just something to do. But I just think that it just kind of goes back to just more of, finding that passion and doing that passion. And, for me, just taking these classes, just always learn something. Like I said, good thing has come out of being on those online stuff is, and even if you're in the classroom doing it, is just hearing the differences of different people and their experiences and, what you can take from that. So it was kind of more, and I just hit it the other day and it made me think of it when we were talking just about passion. It was like, that's kind of where, and then one of the instructors had a little conversation with me on it because he just applauded me because of being a volunteer that I was taking all these classes, just not really, what much of a volunteer does. And I just said, well, I jokingly said that, but then I said, I'm just fortunate that, it's my passion. It's where I want to be and just get better. So
that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, major kudos to you that you're doing all this stuff, especially when it is less exciting and less, I mean, maybe it's nice you don't have to drive to the academy, but also I think you'd rather be in an in-person class. And so you're still taking that hit and doing that class. And you're still, even though you may be the only person on your department that's going to do all that stuff, all the stuff you're bringing back is so important. And hitting on that, if the fire officer stuff and the inspector stuff is the stuff that trips your trigger and you like that stuff, awesome. Bring that passion. Look at what Chad just went on about in a good way. That sounded like I was being a dick. All this shit Chad was just droning on about. That's really interesting to him. No, but we need people that are interested in different things. If we're all interested in one topic, it's weird that you used your middle finger to wipe your forehead, Chad. If we're all interested in the same topics, like now I know if I go to a fire where there are solar panels, and I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but I'm probably going to call Chad. I know if I'm going to a fire where there is grain involved and a grain silo, I'm calling Mike Cox from Rising Sun, because the number of times he's tried to explain to me how simple it is to put out a grain bin fire, I'm standing there going, dude, I'm going to forget by the next time you tell me. I'm just going to call you if that ever happens. Knock on wood. But if that ever happens, you're my first phone call. And that subject matter expert mentality and looking at, and this is something that I think Kevin and I started talking about a while ago in terms of just instructors, but beyond instructors, just the fire service. How do we not have like a list of people in our counties or our neighboring departments or whatever it is, however far you want to take it, send out a Google form for them to fill out and say, what's your name? What's your phone number? And what shit are you interested in? Because if we need, like, if you guys didn't have to hear me drone on, you don't have to, this is our free time. What the hell's wrong with us? If you guys didn't listen to me drone on, you might not know I'm a nerd for Incident Command or for Search Now, or that maybe in a year from now, I'll be a nerd about something completely different and I'll need to update what I'm doing research on. But like, if you need someone to come to your department and talk about it, or it'll be solar fires. It'll be a shocking twist, illuminating even. I could be a lot brighter in that realm. I think I'm done.
All right. Well, I got another question, Barrett.
Yeah.
This is actually for more some of the chiefs that are around here, some people that have experience, just in general, without getting into brand specifics or anything like that. Doing a little research, trying to figure out what to do. And let's say, the budget is there. There's no question for it.
Okay.
But I just want to know just general consensus thought on hydrant valves. Would you go for the cheaper instead of more expensive, or do you kind of like every other appliance in the fire service, you get what you pay for?
That's a great question that I don't think I can answer because I'm not.
I'm not an expert in any answer. I'm just kind of curious to toss around some ideas like people have,
Are you talking like HUMAT valves?
No, just basically just regular, just hydrant valves, like 2.5, like 2.5 inch, and then, off your main plug, whatever they would hook up to a hydrant. Just.
I gotcha. I don't know. That's kind of outside my wheelhouse. Again, going back to the subject matter expert thing, I would kind of defer to maybe. Well, Turner, are you still selling stuff? Do you have any perspective on that, or were you just selling rescue equipment?
I'm not selling stuff anymore. I got out of that.
Okay. I couldn't remember. Sorry.
I mean, I know personally. So one of the so if we run a commercial fire, it's the general expectation is that when you're hooking to the hydrant, you're also going to add a hydrant valve onto one of the 2.5 discharges off the side of the hydrant. It's a gate valve, and it's a 2.5 female to a 4-inch Storts. So that way we can maximize our water output out of the basically out of that hydrant. If there's a chance that we're going to be flowing large master streams or whatever, we'll do that. We have the chance to do that every single fire, so we try to do it at every fire. Speaking of fire, guys just got dispatched for one. A commercial fire at that.
Are you at work?
No, I'm at home.
Or you're at home?
No, work just got hit for a fire.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's typically, we'll throw that, call it a spud valve. I don't really know why potatoes got involved here, but we call it a spud valve, and we will just throw it on one of the 2.5 discharges. But like I said, it's 2.5 to a 4-inch storts because we carry 4-inch hose.
Yeah, like I said, I'm just trying to, I got quotes and ideas from, each way from the high end and the low end, and I was just trying to figure out, kind of what's the best way to go, just people's opinions in general. So,
do you have options to, I guess I'll go with what would be in my wheelhouse. Do you have options to get demos of like the ones that you're looking at the most and put them on the training ground and see what you like? Or are they also similar in terms of operation that trying to break them would be?
Well, and I was looking, I mean, they're all similar. It's just, you got the, for lack of a better term, you're comparing the economy car versus the Cadillac.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha. Chief Francis, you got any insight for him?
Not really, except for what's the warranty on that product. And I would almost consider that a lifeline. So you don't want to go the cheaper route. You want to go the more expensive route if at all possible.
Right.
Because what happens if it fails?
Yeah.
And you run out of water and you got people inside of a structure that's having a hard time getting out.
Right. And that's one of the things I was looking at. Like I said, is that you kind of get what you get. And looking at the specs on those, that was one of the things I was looking at was the warranty and how much pressure and all that. So I was just curious if anybody else has any.
Look at your base materials. If you got a lot of plastics involved, because that's the way for them to make it cheaper, chances are we're firefighters, we're going to break it because there's a difference between unbreakable and firefighter proof. But just from even gated Y point of view or a ball valve Y, we've had plastic handled ones over the years where we've snapped the plastic handles off in one iteration of using it. And then, the steel handles from 1973 are still working just fine.
Turner, you got some insight to provide?
I know that the Humat valve is the DC area favorite. And it's great. It works really, really well for us here. The first engine will pull up. They can leave a guy off to hook up to the hydrant and they can send water right away. The second engine can come up and supplement that system in order to boost pressure. It works great until you find a company that doesn't know how to use it. So just make sure whatever you buy, who's ever picking up your water or, there's some understanding of how to use. I mean, we had an issue. We also, for our raw water, use for our raw water, we use a Siamese instead of doing drop tanks. It works great until someone doesn't know how to supply it in the system. And that we had that issue today that was turned into being a big problem. So just make sure, I guess, your surrounding jurisdictions understand how it works and maybe take out a little demo, see what they're doing. And, show them what you're thinking about getting and what they think about it and whether or not, they'd want to do a drill night with it, with you all, just to get a better understanding of how that works.
All right. Thank you. Now moving on to more important topics.
How much did the hydrant valve cost from Harbor Freight? What's our base price? That said, I have bought a nozzle and God, I have like a nozzle, I think a reducer. I bought some stuff. It's for hazmat training, so it's not even for fire training, but I literally have purchased that stuff on Amazon. And
well, there's $25. There's a difference between kind of using it for for a prop or for not versus a working
I'm not
fire
really pointing you to Amazon. I was making
right. Right, I know.
Yeah. But I mean, if it's there,
right,
I would definitely use Walmart over Amazon. No, that is a great thought, though. I mean, if everything's basically the same, maybe that's where it comes down to just the engineering. Explain to me how yours is different from the competitors, because they're gonna know. I mean, they should know. It's their competitor.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ed's here and his background's cooler than mine, so that pisses me off. Welcome, Ed. Oh, he turned off his camera. Oh my God, that's awesome. What's up? All right, you got to introduce yourself real quick so everybody can hear your voice, because we got to get you in on the discussion tonight. This is too much fun. Yeah. I see him looking for the mute button. We're getting there. 1 second. We're doing sign language. 2 words. Sounds like. Oh, was it a movie or a TV show? All right. We're deep into charades. For those of you listening to the podcast, for those of you watching it, you know I'm lying. We may just get to see Ed's presence, and that's all right with me. Still hoping that Chief K can make it back in. If not, hopefully we can get him in next week. So here's another question. So we're talking about subject matter experts, and I know there are a lot of fire podcasts out there. And this is nice because we can just kind of shoot the shit about whatever comes up. But would you guys like to see, or are there any that you already listened to that you'd like to share, fireground training podcasts that are geared toward certain topics? Like, we could talk to Chad about the realistic perspective on oh God, yep, he just got like
Euro helmets.
Yeah, Euro helmets. Yeah, it won't even be photovoltaic cells and stuff like that. But would you guys like to see more focused, like interviews, like one-on-one stuff that you could listen to later instead of the shotgun? Like, let's do the kitchen table talk. And at some point, I'd like to do this live, where we can go to a station or go hang out at a restaurant or something, or just record it. But in the meantime, was that something you guys would like to hear? Like interviews with subject matter experts? Don't worry, there will still be plenty of me talking in them. I know that's what you're all tuning in for. That feeds my ego, and I appreciate you all.
That's why
Yeah,
I'm
I think
here.
the
That's the
subject
only
matter
reason
experts would be good.
Okay. What'd you say, Chad? You got talked over again. We just need
Can
to
you hear
turn
me
your
now?
audio up louder. Oh my God, Ed's here.
Hey.
Nice. And Ron K's back. Holy cow, we got the whole gang. What the heck? All right. So now that we have Ron back, I want to talk to him real quick. Chief, we had the question come up as we were talking about search. If you're still there, if you're clicked in and everything's working, having some tech issues tonight. But Chief K, hoping to hear your perspective from being on the volunteer side and being on the full-time side, in one role as the chief officer and the other role as the safety officer. Does your perspective on search, or your expectations of your crews in regards to search, does it change between your 2 departments? And if it does, how so?
I think it does. I think obviously staffing is the big one. And I think it comes down to experience of the crews. I train the same. We kind of do a lot of the same training, but first thought when you just asked me that question, there are some differences. A lot of what the programs that we put together for what we do as a safety officer, I try to share with the department that I'm the chief at. Mm-hmm. And, we try to parallel some of those things because they are our mutual aid partners, and that's who we respond with. So a lot of that stuff, that's the reason for it. But, we just have staffing challenges. That's the big one when it comes down to doing a lot of things that I would really like to do. But our relationship with our mutual aid partner has greatly improved. We're now getting a lot more resources on our first alarm assignment. So, it's really helped a lot. Now that we've actually had a few fires and seen how the 2 agencies come together and work well together and communicate well, it helps. It helps me. It gives me a better gauge of what our capabilities are and how we work within. And the few fires I've had, I thought the interactions of the 2 departments, being a large career department and a small volunteer department, worked beautifully. I mean, all the work and efforts that we put into it have come to come to work out in a very positive way. It just intermingled perfectly. Crews were working together on attack lines, performing searches, utilizing the same communication benchmarks. It worked out real well. So, it just took some time. It took some time to put it together, to put the training together. And now we're starting to see some of the positive results.
And one of the things we talked about, I mean, that all speaks to the idea too, that, the citizens don't care what it says on the side of the rig, as long as somebody shows up, and they expect everybody to be professional and know what they're doing and have that motivation. And you guys have a great group of people at the department you're chief at, that are go-getters, and they want to be, they want to be the person that we want showing up to our family's house, which is awesome that you have that to begin with, and then to be able to build that relationship with your mutual aid partner, like you're talking about, for the best thing for the citizens. And that's one of the things we really stress here, is that everything we do is for the citizens at the end of the day. And so looking to, a lot of these folks that either are tuned in or listening to this later are in that rural situation where they might not have that really close nearby mutual aid partner at all. It might just be them with an engine and maybe 4 people. And I want to throw out the perspective that I shared earlier, as I've interacted with different departments around the region, in terms of search, that my thought is that our incident priorities, or our strategic priorities, become more important in those moments where you only have 4 people to choose from, and you've got to figure out, what can we realistically accomplish? And obviously, if you're getting 4 engines, a truck, a battalion chief, and a safety officer, you can take some moderate risks to save property. But if you've got 4 people, one of them has to pump, and one of them, should take command and get more resources there. That leaves you potentially 2 people to focus just on, are there lives to be saved? And I think that's almost where it's an unfair expectation, or not so much expectation, but it's an unfair balance. But it's almost more important, I think, for those rural departments that have fewer people and fewer opportunities to get that help, to focus more on the life safety and more on the search aspect of things, because they're all they've got at that moment. And again, it's not necessarily the most fair of circumstances, but I also don't think it's always conveyed that way, because they do, for a lot of what I've heard, is getting caught up in the, oh, well, we don't have water, we don't have this, we don't have that. And we've got to get all that set up. But realistically, if they get in that one window that doesn't have fire blowing out of it, they break that window, fire doesn't come out of it in the time that they're making their vent or search decision, and they can search that one room. If the rest of the house burns down because there was fire out of every single hole in that house except that one window, at least anybody in that one room that they checked had their last best chance. And as soon as I said that part, the question came up, I want to hear Chief K's perspective from a safety perspective on that. And I think you hit part of that with, or do you have personnel that are experienced enough, or that are committed enough to go in, committed enough to training to go in and do a VES in that high risk situation? And then I think back to Eli, the 5-year-old boy that his dad put him in the window to grab his baby brother or baby sibling out of a crib. And it's like, shouldn't we all be expected to do that? Or is there still that gut twisting feeling of like, oh geez, do we really commit somebody inside when you've only got 2 or 3 people on scene?
I looked at, when you, when you pull up in them situations, in those rural settings, I'm a firm believer that you have to prioritize and stick together and stay together as a crew. I think sometimes when you get in them situations, things can change real quick. Mm-hmm. You definitely need to prioritize. You need to discuss it. Safety is not defined by the preparation or the precautions you take. It's defined by the preparations you make. And you really got to be on it. And, departments, when you think of search, basic search, And then when you get into VEIS, now you're talking a very high risk search that takes a lot of coordination and communication. And, it takes a lot of practice. Those are things that you have to work. As you know, Barrett and Toledo Fire, that was an entire fire department training program. We rolled that out. We researched every piece of vent enter search, added the isolation piece, trained the whole department, because we knew it was a high risk search, that if you're put in a situation, you're going to take that great risk to save a life, which is our expectation, then, we have to be coordinated, prepared to do that. And that's exactly what we did. I feel confident. It's something that we're talking about bringing back up again, because it's starting to get a lot of discussion within the department. But I'm not sure if it answers your question, but
I think that upfront investment that you're talking about really hits on, preparing your crews for that chance, whether it is the big city department that has all the resources available to it you could hope for as a rural department looking at Toledo going, oh my gosh, I wish we had that, to the rural departments that are like, how do we prepare our people for that? And the answer is you train on it. You explain the expectations. And there's been a push online, Chief, and I'm kind of interested to hear your take on this, that VES in some circles has been pushed as this high risk search, but realistically there've been so few firefighter injuries or deaths. I think the last figure I saw, and I wish I could cite where I saw it, but one firefighter death, and it was in Europe, and it was in the 1940s. But there are places like Baltimore and Lexington, Kentucky, Chicago, that VES is part of their standard operating procedure with their outside vent man to go to the roof, like a porch roof, and go in one window, come back out, go in the next window, come back out, just because the walkways even get so clogged with people. And so the people that say it's not really that high risk, what's your take? What are you seeing differently in terms of, is it department by department, or is it perspective?
No, I can see what they're saying by that. I do. I when you first mention that, I can see where they're coming from by that. I think it's because of the circumstances involved. Mm-hmm. It's a targeted search because for sure that there's a high probability that somebody's in there. And you never know what the fire conditions are, what you're going to be facing. That's what it is. It's usually performed quickly by those first crews. The support crews aren't there yet, or maybe in smaller departments with limited staffing, you're going to be putting together that operation with very little backup and or support. So that's the piece where I think, it could be, it's, considered like a high risk to me. If it's played out correctly, I can see other departments, they make that part of what they do on a regular basis. It becomes a routine operation for them. But I can see where they're coming from. But for us, it's something that we don't do a lot. We search aggressively in most all our structures. As you know, Barrett, and your brother, you both work for TFD, and it's what we do, and it's what we expect. And but VEIS is something that we don't do a lot. If that window of opportunity or that situation's there, I think we could do it. We trained everybody to do it. And if that crew decides to go that way and they announce that they're going to do that, we're going to support that operation the best we can.
And I know it wasn't intentional, but I'm writing down. I have a whole Post-it note collection that's in the background here now on the chalkboard. But a window of opportunity just makes so much sense. I mean, that's what VEIS is, right? It's a window of an opportunity for that person that could be inside to get their last best chance.
Exactly. It is. It's in that, you look at it in that light, but it's an opportunity for us to get in there and make that save. So there's just so many factors that come into play, and I know so many different models of departments. There's so many different models out there, from the small volunteer departments like that I'm the chief at, all to the larger departments. It's getting out there and working with your departments, building relationships. One thing when I took over as chief, I says, I'm not going to use that excuse anymore that we don't have enough staffing, because we do. Because we have enough neighboring departments within our area. I think just about everybody's doing automatic aid anymore. I know you guys do it aggressively in Wood County. I hear it all the time in Western Lucas County. One thing that I thought was kind of funny, and I can't say for everybody, is how departments don't train. To me, I look at automatic aid as everybody needs it today. Let's face it. If your department's like mine, we don't have a lot of people beating down the door to join the department, but there are things that's within our control. Some things that we can control is working with our auto aid partners more on a regular basis. I was surprised when I was doing some training with the NOVFA and the National Volunteer Fire Council, when we kind of went around and did some training, is how many departments do not work with their mutual aid partners or automatic aid partners on a regular basis. To me, I look at it, if you develop that program and that's what you do, and you're not, because you're basically responding as one department. Yeah, you might be the Rossford Fire Department or the Northwood Fire Department, or we might be Washington Township and Toledo, but when that fire comes in, you're one department. And if you don't work together and communication and coordinate on a very dynamic, complex fire ground, things can really change in a hurry. And, it's those decisions and actions that are taken within that first 5 minutes that are going to make or break you. Hands down, guaranteed. In those first 5 minutes, if you got all these agencies coming and working and you're not coordinated, and if you think that you're going to go in there and all of a sudden get there and say, hey, look, somebody's up in that window and you're going to do VEIS and you're not coordinated with your mutual aid departments, are you going to expect a successful outcome? I hope so. I pray so. But if you don't coordinate and practice that and work with your mutual aid partners on a regular basis, you're setting yourself for absolute failure. And that's kind of what we do with our crews all the time. We're always working with different stations, working together. How you're going to work with one station and another, and that's our Toledo department. But with your mutual aid partners, we're always doing it. I train my Washington Township crews because our main mutual aid partners is Toledo. So it's a little bit of an easy process for me, that I can train those crews to do that. But there's no doubt in my mind that if we were put in a position, we could perform that tactic, the EIS, no problem. Because like I said, it's something that we do on a regular basis and train for.
I never made this connection in my head or drew this parallel. But listening to you talk about auto aid companies or departments, I mean, the parallel in my mind is just like you said, it's who's your neighboring company in the city, or like in Turner's case in the county, where he could be working anywhere. And what square mileage are you working with, Turner, and how many stations? Weren't ready for the pop quiz?
I was not.
Let's go with stations.
22 stations across 530 miles or so.
Okay. So at any given point, especially if you're on overtime or whatever else, you'd be working with people you've never seen before in your life. I mean, and that's now, hopefully if you have that set schedule, I mean, if you're at station 5, your auto aid is station 3 and station 7 and station 9. Your automatic aid is the rest of that alarm assignment. And I've never really thought of it that way, but that importance of training together, strip away the labels, strip away departments versus companies versus whatever. It's all the same thing. I mean, you could have, just because, somebody's on ABC Metro department doesn't mean that they're exempt from having to train with essentially those neighboring companies that are their auto aid companies.
Right.
And
that's the way
we
I
all
looked
need to
at
practice together.
That's the way I looked at it. It was the staffing. We don't have the staffing issue anymore. I mean, I know that my department may not be able to, if Washington Township gets a call, I might not always have a lot of people there. It might be one crew and that's about it, but I know who's coming. And, just like everybody else with auto aid. So we're overcoming that. So that's the way I kind of looked at it too. That's who's coming with us. It's no different. Let's, like you said, Bear, if it's station 5 and 7 responding together, it's engine 24, engine 19, engine 72.
Yep.
And they could fit in. That's what we kind of work. And I think that's kind of what we're working on. I think for Lucas County, I'm on a subcommittee with the Lucas County Fire Chiefs with Consolidated Dispatch coming around the corner. We're going to have the same dispatchers. And we're working on assuring that our tactics, our terminology, what we say and do on the fire ground is going to be the same, because it's the coordination piece. And, we rely heavily on our dispatch support. They have to understand what we're doing, what we're saying, and what their role could be if we would do things such as VEIS, so that they're on board with Maydays and all those other fire ground emergency procedures. I know there's some brothers from Providence. We both share the sheriff department as dispatchers. Those are police dispatchers. I think they do a good job to give us some logistical needs, but they sure don't support me tactically, because they don't know what we're talking about. And that's a concern to me. So we're working through that, I'm high hopes for the dispatch, Lucas County Dispatch, which hopefully starts here by the end of the year, that we'll have that dispatch support, because that's one element that I don't really have. Now, I have worked out some logistical stuff where if we do have a fire in the township, that Toledo Fire Dispatch is going to jump in there and give us that dispatch support that we needed, because those were some of the shortcomings that I noticed with some of the fires that we have had, was that element right there.
Well, and that was something we talked about. I'm not sure if you had jumped off for the incident you had to go on or not at this point, but when Dan Turner was talking about the rescue they made this week and dispatch picking up on the callers no longer answering, now we're hearing what might be agonal respirations, and those dispatchers were keen enough to those clues and not overloaded with, and short time dispatcher at one point where I was, I could have 3 or 4 police crews plus a fire plus, a motorcycle accident going on all at the same time, and I'd be overloaded. I might not have picked up on those clues in that instance. And so, but those dispatchers in Loudoun County picked up on what was going on and said, you know what, we're going to upgrade this to a person trapped in this fire because all those clues are there. And I think that, especially for consolidation, and we're kind of hitting a hyper local conversation here, but when we've got people that complain about consolidation and they're like, well, we're too busy as it is, or we're this or we're that. It's like, but what's the best thing for the citizens? And I feel like they lose that, because if we have people that are trained to handle fires specifically, and we've got a bunch of those for the Toledo fire portion, and we can train people to that level of our dispatchers that are focused on one topic, that become the subject matter experts in dispatching that, isn't that better for the citizens? But we lose that somewhere. And that's the stuff that frustrates the hell out of me is that we it's easy to start getting into the politics of it. And it's like, but what realistically is going to be better? And if we have somebody that picks up on it, like those dispatchers did this week in Virginia, and say, you know what, this is now a person trapped. We're going to, hey, she said she was going to the basement. We're going to give you that information. That the information passed along by dispatch could make or break a person's last best chance.
I agree. And that's why I'm getting toward the end of my career. But I honestly believe that what's being put together with the countywide dispatch. Now, this is for us in Lucas County. I know there's people throughout listening to your message here, but I think it's the best thing that's going to happen to the fire service in Lucas County. I really do. I think that we'll have 4 dispatchers on duty, sharing those duties, dispatching everybody and keying in on our runs. One thing that I know that we did, Barrett, you would know, when we did our Mayday training at the house on Bancroft. Look how engaged our dispatchers on every single evolution that we did all summer long. They were part of it every single time. And look how much better they got. And, you know, how much we improved and with just their dispatch support. And that's what a lot of that was. Remember, it was just a Mayday scenario with crews going in the back doing somewhat of a modified VEIS to get to our down firefighters. So, you know, it was all part of the big picture process of kind of what you're talking about, where it really helps out a lot.
And that was when I was still in Rossford and we were doing the after action reports, having dispatchers that actually wanted to come and sit in on those. You know, we invited them, and to be honest, we didn't really expect them to show up, and they did. They wanted to understand what role they played in our operations, and we gave them huge credit for the fact that they wanted to be part of that. That was so neat to have them be interested in what is part of their job, but admittedly not a big part of their job. They're not dispatching or managing a lot of working fires on their day-to-day schedule. They're primarily worried about law enforcement. And I'll be the first to admit, as a dispatcher, yeah, I was going to make fire wait if it was between fire and a cop, because a cop is more likely to be completely by themselves than my fire guys were. I would let them call me 2 or 3 times if I had a cop who sounded like something might be going sideways. That's the way it has to work. But if we have that option, and then to get them involved in training, and now at the very beginning, I was starting to get my head spinning about, you know, this for them training weekend that we're doing. How do we get dispatchers involved in that to come see what it looks like, what all is happening? And then even just looking at SOGs. I mean, and Turner, I might lean on you again, or if anybody else has a procedure like this. I recently saw, you know, there's 2 things we repeat 3 times on the fire ground. We repeat Mayday, 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 and we repeat victim, victim, victim. So there's no question for either of those 2. And I had never heard the victim, 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 but it completely made sense, right? There's no question in your head. Did I just hear them say victim? Now you know that somebody somewhere is going to be moving a victim through the building or sheltering them in place, or, you know, everybody clues into the fact that now we're at you know, our not that our priorities have changed, but that something has changed on the fire ground that will impact how we're doing things. And just things like that, you know, getting dispatch involved to listen for those cues. So, man, maybe it's worth getting a dispatcher on here next week. Wait, we got Ed. Are you just law enforcement side, or are you both, or what's your?
Me?
Yes. Are you?
No, I'm strictly programming. I'm on the hardware side of dispatch.
Oh, nice. So I didn't know that.
I actually technically work for the sheriff.
Oh.
So all I do is program the radios, and, you know, I do sit in on I have been on some of the TAC meetings on both the law and the fire side.
I got you.
But more or less for like the zones that are going to go into the radios and that kind of a thing.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this, because I've heard this from people that have worked other places. And again, we're focusing hyper local here for a second, but that's all right, because maybe it'll apply to some other folks. But even features like, you know, the Motorola radios being able to dispatch could change us to the right fireground channel. Are there features that have the potential to increase our safety, but would require so much training that it's hard to implement, from your perspective on understanding both sides of it?
Yeah, there's also right now, because you've got a lot of the older models still in service. The old XTS series portables are still a lot of the fleet are still the old XTSs. They haven't migrated to the APX series radios yet. When everybody migrates to them, then there might be some other options for that. There are some man-down features that are available in that radio. There's some localized emergency tones that you can generate straight from the radio.
I've seen that. That was fascinating.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a couple other things that you can do hardware-wise. But, yeah, you know, like you said, you get too far into it, and then, you know, it's a dexterity thing. You've got your gloves on. You know, how far do you get with it before you're fumbling with it more than, you know,
right,
where you can just, you know, call for dispatch to relay the message or something like that.
Well, that was one of the arguments I heard was for somebody who came from another major metro department that said, yeah, when we'd get assigned a fireground channel, the radios would just change themselves. You wouldn't have to manipulate the radio. And it's like, wow, that's interesting. But also, anything without the appropriate level of training just introduces confusion. And
there's some location things that are coming with the Apex series radios.
mm-hmm.
They can tell command what division you're on.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh yeah. You can. It'll show you what division you're on in the building. It can relay that back to command. It can relay what general area you are, stuff like that. And there's also some if a radio does hit an emergency button, there's a feature where it generates a Bluetooth type signal that would generates a man down or an emergency situation signal to everybody that's within a Bluetooth range, which would be the fire ground. Now, I don't know if it generates a different tone the closer you get to the person. I haven't played with it very much, but I heard Lenawee County had a real big problem with it because they initialized it in their radios, but didn't have any training on it. And then somebody bumped an emergency button on a fire ground, and then everybody's radio on the fire ground started screaming.
Oh my
Nobody
gosh.
knew what was going on. So everybody said, well, clear your Maydays. So all of a sudden dispatch has 70 Maydays come up, or, however many people were on the fire ground. It was
right. Everybody's hitting their button trying to make it
everybody's
stop.
trying to clear their Mayday. Yeah. So, but there's some features, and there's a case where the training, the feature was enabled in the portable, but the training wasn't rolled out to the crews. So they had this event and nobody knew what was going on.
Jeez, the training component of that, especially when now you're in the ideal age trying to figure out, and now people are manipulating their radios and losing, task focus on what they're really trying to accomplish. That's frightening to hear. And that's where I kind of like, I know it walks that line with what features are available versus we're still an organization that primarily has trouble changing zones. So maybe this isn't a place where we start looking for other options.
Well, something on the new, when we go to consolidated, again, we're talking micro local here, but when we do go to that, that's going to help with that because you're going to be able to use your ABC switch instead of having to manipulate zones. So you can get to your med channel with just a simple ABC switch change.
Nice. So, and Turner, Turner, you got your hand up. Maybe doing things a little different out in Loudon.
Yeah, one of the things I thought that was pretty interesting and pretty cool, actually Prince George's County does it, is they go and route off of the mobile radio that's in the rig. So when they go to switch over, you get a TAC channel assigned from dispatch, and when you switch over to that, you switch over to the channel, and then you hit the button to lock in that you want 8 Alpha 3. That's the channel that you're switching over to. And then the next thing is your staffing. So your mobile will ask you what your staffing is. You turn the dial to how many you have. You hit it to lock it in. And then that will send a message to all the MDCs that, Rescue Squad 814 is en route with 8. That way, there are a lot of volunteer staffing there still. That way, the battalion chief running down the road knows or can see what rigs are getting out and what's getting out staffed or understaffed. It can see right away.
Well, and that too is an interesting point because there's the pros and cons we always talk about. There's always pros, there's always cons. We went on the Toledo side to pushing a lot more buttons, and then we realized, okay, that message doesn't always get across. Let's go back to saying it and verbalizing it on the radio. And same thing, like when you were the fire you were my aide on in Rossford, where that's one of the things I would always get from the crews is, okay, how many if they didn't say it when they went en route, I needed to know their staffing because I wanted to at least know how many people they had before getting par tags and understanding how we could split crews if we needed to with this shorter staffing. And on top of that, before we had alpha tags in the radios, as they keyed up their portables, I would write down which rig it was and put them on my tactical worksheet. So that way, if all they got out was, a blip of screaming or something like that, I would know just by looking at the screen, okay, those last 3 numbers are these last 3 numbers. And yeah, we can remove a lot of that, but then, we still get into that. Okay, if we remove more talking on the radio, our people, how do we know they receive the message? And I'm all for less talking, and I was going to try and wrap it up here, but now I've got another topic I want to bring up while we've got Ed and Ron and Chief Francis. We got a good mix of people that are in the loop on this, Chad. One of the things that's always intrigued me is, especially as we've had people, going en route, or you hear the crews that, yeah, Chief, we're 30 seconds out. Do you have an assignment for us? And yes, some of that comes back to training and making sure everybody knows, hey, here are the standing orders for when you get on scene. Go to the command post, or Chief should hear you and be able to give you an assignment. But all that traffic is coming across as we have people in the IDLH. And one of the mentalities I always had when I had the opportunity to run scenes, if we had anybody in the IDLH, whether it was at a structure fire or even on the water for water rescue incidents, I would split those channels. So the boats would all be on one talk group. So that way, if all of a sudden a boat hit a rock, one of our water rescue boats hit a rock, then they could get through without worrying about the fourth medic unit showing up on scene telling me where they're parking. And I know a lot of other places go the command channel route, where they have one channel for just command and crews responding and get on scene, and then they switch to the fireground channel, which again goes back to, we'd have to train people so they'd understand. But has there been any discussion on that for the sake of leaving that talk group clear for people inside the house? Has that come up at all in the discussions for Lucas County? Having a fireground channel and a command channel. Sorry, Chief, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
We've seen it in Lucas County with the tender task force, when it's called. If you have a big enough fire, water operation should be separately. But what's your thoughts on staging? I know there's not a lot of departments out there that do it, but I think that's super, super important that we start training on, is doing a staging channel and staging resources. So if you don't have a task, you stay with your truck until you're called.
I think that's important, but I have kind of a twofold thought on that. One, a staging channel would essentially, in my mind, be the equivalent of a command channel, because that's where people are going to be listening as they respond. And then listening, they're listening to both channels. We know that somebody's got the fireground channel on in the back seat. So calling it a staging channel, I think, it limits it a little bit, because it could be used as a command channel and then a tactical channel. I think the other thought is, instead of staging, one of my biggest pet peeves right now, and Kevin, go ahead and pull out the soapbox again for me to stand on, is Grant Schwalbe, who I've talked about on here before, one of my mentors from here originally and then moved to Florida. What he and a bunch of people did in his county, Lee County, Florida, was they went through and said, listen, it doesn't make sense for us to be making it up as we go every single time we go to a structure fire. We have the same priorities every time we go to a structure fire. And they had some initial issues with this until they sat down and said, what are our priorities? We want fast water on the fire. We want quick searches, quick primary searches. They made this whole list among however many departments are within this one county acting as a county system. And then they took what we do in EMS and they applied it to fire and said, hey, instead of, every time you get on scene, you say, engine 1, you have attack, engine 2, you have backup, engine 3, you have search, engine 4, you have RIT. If we do most of that the same way every time, because our priorities don't change, why don't we have standing orders instead? It'd be like going to an EMS run and calling med control for aspirin every time you have a chest pain. If we know we're going to do it and we know it's a priority and we have a couple reasons why we might not do it, and we know we need to communicate that we didn't do it for whatever reason, then why not just have a standing response order that still has some flexibility to it, but gives us that play from the beginning? And what they did was they developed a playbook for residential, for commercial, for all these different situations, kept it pretty simple, and then left room. So they developed, and I'm not a sports guy, so bear with me here, but they developed a playbook, but then left room to call audibles and explained when you can call an audible. So like getting on scene as the first due engine, their primary concern is getting water on the fire. But if you got people hanging from the windows, you're calling your audible from that original play. you're going into rescue mode. Somebody else knows that second due engine now takes that first due engine's responsibilities. So instead of getting on scene and saying, hey, engine 3's pulling up on scene, chief, what have you got for us? Engine 3's on with third due engine responsibilities, or engine 3's on third due, and that's all you have to say. And everybody knows just by that you're doing the third due engine's responsibilities. And it kind of blows my mind in some ways that we, for as much as we rely on the standing orders on the EMS side, we make it up as we go along every time at a structure fire. And we're not really making it up. We have the common framework that we're all using, I think, to some extent. But why not just make it standing orders? And then if we deviate, that's when we announce it. And so if we're not going to go to two separate channels to eliminate some of that unnecessary talking or train on unnecessary talking, or, the multitude of other options, why not develop a tactical plan for different kinds of fires that we're planning on going to, knowing our priorities ahead of time, leaving room for some flexibility, but understanding that each rig is going to have its own set of responsibilities based on the order it should arrive on scene. I don't know. There's my soapbox for the night.
I think something like that you're talking about would work for full-time departments. But I mean, when you got a volunteer department that you don't know who's going to be riding in that right seat or things that are going to happen, I mean, somebody might not keen, but they won't know necessarily what to do all the time. Somebody that goes to a structure fire every day opposed to somebody that makes 2% of the call volume per year.
I hear that. And I guess, yeah, part of my mind goes one way. And I think, if they're in that right front seat, are they filling the spot, or are they qualified for that spot? And if they're not qualified for that spot, should they be leading a crew? So do you not respond then? Or do you want manpower on scene no matter how worthless it's going to be? And that's the issue I think we get into with the volunteer side. And again, speaking from that experience in my background, okay, you give me 3 brand new people and one's riding the seat just because they needed somebody to ride the seat. What value are they really to me other than pairing them up with another crew? And now I've got a crew of 6 trying to do a task. And if it's search, I don't need a crew of 6. I can't split them. I can't use them. They might stand outside. But maybe that's where, not to answer a problem with other problems, but maybe the solution lies in like what we've kind of talked about before, where if you are going to ride that seat, you're going to have certain qualifications you have to meet. And I think, where we primarily focus on the departments directly around us, a lot of places we're not that much further to go stretching beyond our neighboring departments to say, listen, if we can't get an engine from XYZ department, maybe 2 more jurisdictions over is a full-time department, or is a department that's got, people on duty part-time, or whatever the case is, that maybe we need to expand our auto aid out beyond our normal our normal range, because we're going to be guaranteed to have people that meet these qualifications that are actually going to serve a purpose to us on scene versus just cause a distraction almost. And I know that's not realistic. And I know, like I said, I added layers to the onion versus peeling layers away, but that was one of the pushes we started making in when I was still on Rossford was, why are we just looking at our departments that are around us? Because as soon as we short them, everybody's short. Now we've depleted all of half a county. Versus, hey, let's look at Washington Township. They always send us 6 people on an engine and they're ready to do work. Why not put them on the first alarm assignment? It's going to take them 15 minutes, 20 minutes to get there. But if we put them on the first alarm, by the time we need them, by the time we're switching out our first alarm crews, we got somebody there and we're not depleting from our place. And we know they're going to send competent people because they train their butts off. And I think that's where we open that can of worms of, are we just looking for bodies, or do we need to make sure there's some level of competence? And so The other mindset with that in my head would be, you're not guaranteed to know which rigs you're getting, but based on their arrival and watching either the MDT or listening to the radio to know, hey, we're probably going to be the fourth arriving engine. So here are our responsibilities. Flip open the playbook, because they literally have a playbook. Flip open the playbook and it says, you're going to do this, 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 and this. I'd say you're almost better off having a playbook for somebody to refer to who only shows up to 2% of the calls versus getting told, hey, I need you to set up I need you to take water supply and set up at this blah, 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 blah. Or I need you to go in and, split your crew. I need half of you to do search and half of you to do outside vent. Or, even something as simple for those of us that train on it on a regular basis, but hey, I need you to be RIT. And now you've got 3 green members and 1 person who makes 2% of the calls. Maybe those couple bullet points of here are responsibilities, do a 360, stage basic equipment, listen to the freaking radio, keep a tactical worksheet, and be ready to go in and be that first arriving crew to a down firefighter. 5 bullet points that might jog their memory enough because we have a playbook to go off of. There's pros and cons to all of it. If there was a golden solution to all of our woes, we wouldn't have a kitchen table to sit around and complain and solve the world's problems.
Would have wrote a book about it and you'd be a millionaire.
Yeah, but I would have spent most of it on Amazon in the last year. Cause I'm bored. Cause I can't go anywhere. I don't know why I'm singing. The coffee's kicking in.
I know Kevin. Kevin's done a good job. He's got a playbook that he's been making up for the last year or so that we're gonna start making more copies of. Like when you get on scene, these are your objectives. But I mean, what you're talking about too is no different than what the MCI kits are for Lucas County.
Yes.
You open them up and then these are your tasks.
Yep.
Just make sure when you wear the vest, you have it turned inside out so nobody talks to you. You just do the job.
Well, I did one up for our high-rise procedures in Toledo because it's a long booklet. It's great information. But I'm looking at it going, I'm going to be acting on engine 3, and engine 3 has the highest area of like working high-rise structure fires in the city. I need a cheat sheet. I need something simpler to look at because I'm too dumb to memorize this whole thing. I need to look and see what role or what check boxes I need to hit, and not just for checking check boxes, but to make sure we set this incident up for success. And so, yeah, I don't think Jeff Klein has always pointed to, I think his brother-in-law is an airline pilot, and the number of checklists they use. And obviously on a pretty regular basis, that's a pretty routine job, right? They take off, they land, they dump the patients, they pick up patients, they take off, they land. But when it hits the fan, it hits the fan. And a lot of lives are at risk. And they go to checklists. So whether it's the beginning of an incident to set it up for success, or whether it's, I think I have 4 or 5 different versions of Mayday checklists that as we go out and teach these classes, we give to people. I think we had 2 or 3 options in the Rossford clipboards, just because somebody might like this one more than this one. It's the same information, but the flow is different, or the reminders are a little different. One was more a script that I think we adapted from Tim Romstadt, Battalion Chief Romstadt from Springfield Township, rather. There's different versions to do it, but I think the reliance on, especially on the volunteer side, of just, either they're going to know what they know when they get here, or they're going to be worthless to me, but I'll use them as bodies somewhere. That's a tough line to walk. I feel it. I can relate to it. I understand exactly what you're saying. It just sucks that those are kind of our options. And how do we change it?
I think your checklist idea is good. I don't necessarily think it'd be good for the first engine in. It'd be good for second, third, and fourth, because there's nothing's identical. I just hate to, have the incident commander doing a 360 and the first truck getting off going interior when the incident commander didn't want them to go interior, then you got an accountability issue.
Well, and I mean, announcing the strategy off the bat should fix that issue. I mean, making sure that, you know, if you're saying off the bat this is defensive, or even just knowing that, hey, that first due officer has to finish their 360 before anybody commits, if that's the decision that's made. But realistically, hopefully that first truck officer is doing their 360 before they commit on some level too. So, I mean, I get it. And I don't think it's anything that, I think we could what if it a lot. And I'd love to try it in real life. I'd love to try it full scale in scenarios to see how well it worked or what the shortfalls would be for our area versus the what ifs. But how do you get that much coordination together? But to hear you guys are developing, and Kevin, maybe you can kind of talk about your playbook a little bit. I know you tried to pop in there for a second, and then we'll wrap up after this because I know we're going long tonight. But talk about your playbook and like what was the mindset?
Well, my playbook is a steal from another coworker I had when I worked at the 180th. It's actually, the book itself is actually a pilot's flight checklist book.
Oh, what the hell?
Laminated sleeves.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's one of those like, I can't share because only the host can share. I'd show you one of the pages out of it, but it's kind of one of those like, the first 5 pages are IC checklists for anything from an aircraft incident to a structure to EMS to first arriving, that kind of stuff.
You're a co-host now, so you can share it if you want to.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn technology. Give me a second. I've never had to share from my phone before, so that's.
Oh yeah, that. Good luck. We're all counting on you. That's an airplane reference.
But sorry, apparently I can't multitask at the moment.
No worries. I shouldn't have thrown that at you, but I'm curious to see it because I've thought about, especially that
it's very basic, and then the other parts to it is, so mind you, the checklist itself is like 30 pages long. Damn it, wrong one. Sorry, it signed into my wrong. God damn it.
I just made this more challenging.
Anyway,
you know what?
Yes, you did.
Maybe we could just talk about this next time, and you could have it all pulled up as an example, and we could talk.
I can do it. I'll just finish up real quick of what I've got, and then we can actually show it next week.
Okay.
And I'll actually bring the book home so I can just video it if need be, so you can see kind of how it's laid out.
Okay.
But the case of the point was, and kind of my discussion with Josh about making extra copies for people is, we kind of put out in a policy-ish type form of, this is the stuff you will have in your binder. Mm-hmm. All the other pages are stuff that's up to you of what you need for you. It's you specific. Like mine, I have friction loss calculator sheets in it for everything from 1 inch all the way up to 5-inch hose, just in case I get a question on a scene. Hey, we're having problems getting this, blah, blah, blah. What should I be running at? Mm-hmm. Hey, handy dandy guide. Here we go. Another one, Rexham, one of the big can facilities next door to us. Sorry, mm-hmm. Ardell now. I have a floor plan that they gave me that I shrunk down and threw in there. Nice. Because, well, I don't have the building memorized, but now if I pull my battle binder out, I can look at it and it's got what I need to know in it. Mm-hmm. Back from when I still worked at the 180th, I had F-16 procedures slipped in the pages. So that way, I mean, that was our bread and butter. So it was pretty automatic for me. But if I ever had a question, I could pull it out and like, okay, this is the assignment we should be doing right here for this type of incident. So it's a binder that you can make to yours as long as the main portion of it still follows with the same guide that everybody else is playing off.
Nice.
Another thing I started adding to it recently was all of our equipment. One of them is more of just a bullshit my side for station duty stuff, where it's how much oils and what type of oils do each one of the trucks take. So mm-hmm. if I get, somebody pops off the floor and says, hey, we need such and such, I can just look in my book and go like, yep, we need this type of oil and we need this many quarts. But another page of mine is how much 1 3/4 do we carry on it? How many
Mhm.
ladders and what size ladders do we carry on each one? How much foam and what types of foam do we keep on each truck? So if anybody questions and says, hey, what do you guys have sitting in your station? We need this. I can go, yes, we need truck 85.
Mhm.
And I kind of want to reach out to like Waterville, Monclova, and that kind of stuff around us and kind of get the same thing from them. So that way, when I'm looking at it, trying to figure out what resources I need, well, they have a specific type. I know that's on there. Or I need a truck with more ladders. I know what I'm requesting. Just it gives me a page I can flip to that gives me a quick reference for all the area stuff that I know what assets I can have coming if they have personnel available to get them to me.
Yep.
So, like I
That
said,
sounds
I can show it to you, but it's
Yeah.
it's
I
like
think-
9x5. It fits in your gear pocket. I carry it in my mask bag. I've got a Flyers helmet bag that I carry most of my excess gear in.
Mhm.
I carried it in my pocket for a while, but I found out water and paper are not necessarily friends.
Weird how that happens. But yeah, let's since we kind of ran long tonight, I want to hit this more and maybe we can explore it a little more in detail too. And I've got some examples here. I know Turner, you guys have a playbook. Turner still here? Nope, he's gone. He must have caught a run or whatever. But they've got a playbook for Northern Virginia. I can pull up the one that Schwalbe sent me from Florida, and we can kind of have a discussion about, you know, what works, what doesn't, what are some issues we could solve here, and then, you know, how do you go about figuring out what would really work in the real world? Because I think this concept, especially Kevin, with you coming up with your own and, you know, looking at different ways to incorporate elements of it, how could we look at improving our response and the expectations and the knowledge of the roles arriving on scene and eliminate some of that unnecessary radio traffic by just not reinventing the wheel every single time. I think there's something to pick apart here, and let's see where it goes. So next week, playbooks on March 20. Nope, that's not right. I can't do math. Yeah, March 21st. I can do math. Any other ideas for next week? Anything on your mind that you want to talk about besides Euro helmets?
What
and
color?
What's that?
What color can we get the checklist in? That's kind of that's a topic all by itself.
The colors of the checklist?
Yes.
Okay, I'll add that in there. Let me just pull out my Sharpie and colors. See, this is the stuff that ends up making it in the description. Oh yeah, Ben, go ahead.
Hey, I'm just curious on how you guys do VES up your way. I was just curious about that.
Ooh,
So
perfect. I'll add that to the list too. We talked a little bit about it tonight. But yeah, we can hit that next week too. So VES playbooks, anything else? Going once, going twice. All right, one last plug for the night. I'm going to share my screen again real quick. Oh my God, I accidentally made you the real host, Kevin. I thought I made you a co-host. Well, this is unfortunate.
I'm the king.
Well, that's screwed up. I hope it's still recording.
And I can't pass it back to you.
Nobody can?
I
oh
can't.
my.
Can I?
It's
Try
still
right.
recording.
If you can't pull it off, that's fine. But I am the host now. Perfect. Thank you. What a dumb thing to do. So just a quick reminder, fireground4.com, and on the homepage, I'll take you back to that real quick. Click to register now right at the top. Proceeds benefit the family of Dominic Bama Hunt. You click that, you'll hear a little bit, or you read a little bit of the backstory. One of the pictures walking through the house with Teresa. And then the breakdown, the webinar, 6 to 10 on April 9th. That's a Friday. And then included in the price of the hands-on training is the webinar, and then 2 days of hands-on training, 8 hours both days. No concrete floors, no bullshit. This is like straight up house full of stuff, real smoke, real conditions, as close to real as we can make it without burning the house down. Because this is not a live burn, but this is going to be real smoke, real conditions, and real challenging, real intense, as close to realistic as we can make it for them, for our citizens. $100 for 2 days of hands-on training and that 4-hour classroom session where you'll hear from the family of Bama and how they made it out and their perspective for firefighters when it comes to search training. And the online seminar only, we were going to do it for free, but since we're doing it for the family, we just put $10 on there, $10 for 4 hours of training. And we're still working on making sure people get CEs if that's an incentive for you, but that shouldn't be a problem. So make sure you spread the word as much as you can. We want to fill these classes, not only to give people a realistic sense of what search should be like versus what a lot of us learned in our fire classes that might not be the best information. We recently at Fireground Training Bureau changed how we teach search based on the firefighter rescue surveys, based on a great podcast that Grant Schwalbe did with Larry McCormack from Chicago. There's a lot of information out there, and stuff does change, and we want to give you the best information, the best experience to see what it's really like to be in a house fire, moving patients through realistic conditions in a real house versus just moving mannequins on a concrete floor, because that is not what's going to be happening. So Dan Turner is going to be out, and his crew just made a grad this week. Ben is going to be out. We've got a great group of instructors that are all donating their time to do this for them, for our citizens, for the family that lost Bama, for us to get the best training experience we can out of it. That's April 9th, 10th, and 11th. So please, if you aren't able to sign up yourself, just share it on your Facebook page, share it with other firefighters that want to improve, that want to, be the crews that they want coming for their family. So thank you guys very much for tuning in tonight. We will hit VES and playbooks again next week. And then if you have any other topic ideas, you can leave a message on fireground4.com. Just put the information in the contact page, or on Fireground Training on Facebook. You can leave a comment and we'll add it to the list. So thank you guys all for being here. I love you all, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.